Hello, dreamers, and welcome back to the show once again. This is the 303rd episode of California Dreaming, and I have a few things to say about the show before we get started. This is an independent, ad free podcast, which means I am fully supported by you, the listeners, and there are a number of ways that you can help. You can leave a nice rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or whichever platforms you use. It helps new listeners find us. You can recommend the show in true crime forums and discussion groups. You can follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And if you're feeling really ambitious, you can become a Patreon subscriber, where for just starting at $1 a month, you can support me while listening to hundreds of hours of content that you won't hear anywhere else. And if a subscription isn't your thing, but you'd still like to make a contribution, you can do so using my email at californiapod@gmail.com. Today, I have some thank yous to shout out to Diana in Australia, Hinzo, Mike B in the UK, Sarah O, Michael M in Ireland, Mariella S in the UK also, Kim B, Lydia N in Australia, Marion R, David S in New York, Pam G, and Stephanie G for either joining Patreon, raising their pledge, going annual, or donating through PayPal. All right, we are finally at the end of our series on Teresa Stone. So without further ado, let's get to this 10th and final episode on the murder of Randy Stone. In the last part, it was just a whole bunch more of Teresa getting caught up in her lies and all of her denials, including being called out on how she really feels about Pastor David, something that Teresa tried really hard to avoid and really hard to not have to admit to. But it is difficult to hide from the fact that you've been having an affair with the same person for so many years, that there had to be something there for her to keep it going for so long. Teresa gets confronted about other affairs that she had, or slip-ups. We know about the one with Officer Matt, but another one came up in this episode, a man they call Brother Goodman. He gets brought up too. And at first, Teresa tried to gloss over it. She tried to blow past it, making it out to be nothing more than a friendly hug and a peck on the cheek. But when she gets told that their investigators are going to go and talk to him, she fesses up that, yeah, there was probably more to it than that. We heard Teresa blame Randy for having an affair as the reason for her to be having affairs, while at the same time accusing him, Randy, her husband, of not loving her, refusing to hold her hand, and her all-around lack of self-esteem surrounding all of it. That's what contributed to her adulterous behaviors. She admitted that the last time she had sex with the pastor was around the beginning of March, maybe the first or second week of March. That was the last time she claimed. But we could just take that with a grain of salt. She was confronted about keeping it a secret that she was aware of who killed her husband, only admitting that she was told by the pastor the day afterwards. But we know that this was premeditated, and she knew about the plan well in advance, and she blamed being brainwashed as the reasons why she didn't say anything to police about her knowledge of the murder. She, in a roundabout way, almost accused Randy of being abusive towards her, aka casting herself as a victim of domestic violence. And furthermore, she said that her telling David about it was part of the reason why David had an issue with Randy to begin with. It wasn't about her or the insurance money. She would tell David that Randy isn't treating her right, and this would cause David to fly into this murderous rage and want to kill him. Teresa was also confronted about how she acted about the guns being under her bed the day that her house was searched, and how evasive and obstructive she was acting. And that's about where we ended last time. We're going to pick it up now with the detectives wanting to dig more information out of Teresa regarding the initials at the bottom of that torn up love letter. So let's get back to it. Detective John said, "Let me ask you this. On this note, this is kind of driving me nuts. What is that?" And he was pointing to something on the paper, and Teresa replied, "Honeymoon in Paris." He then said, AIE? And she said, I don't know what that means. He told me a long time ago, and I honestly, I don't know. How did he tell you what these codes meant? He asked. And she replied, well, he left me a voicemail message about the letter and about what each one meant. But I've just never kept it in my brain. He asked, what about that? And then Teresa said, GDB. She's stalling and stalling, more stalling. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know. Detective John said, just think about it. I think that he knows what it means and that it is sexually explicit and that Teresa knows it too, but is ashamed to say it out loud. She eventually will, but she's sticking to the denials for right now. And she just sits there staring at the letters for a while. And finally she said, man, I'm racking my brain. I don't know what that means. GDB. Detective John said ULUAN on the far right side. Teresa said, this one? What does that say? ULUAN? ULUAN. I don't know. I don't know. LYP? And then Teresa went quiet. This one is also sexually explicit, just like the GDB. Teresa is on the verge of denying knowing what it means before Detective John finally says, I'm pretty sure I know what that means. So Teresa's gonna fess up to it, and she says, okay, do you want me to say it? He says, yeah. And she says it out loud. And she goes, okay. And they move on. Then Teresa said, ROE. 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 I don't know. ROE. Quite some time actually elapsed as she sat there in silence, pretending to try and figure out what all these letters mean. The letter is torn up and things aren't lined up perfectly, so they spend some time trying to figure out what initials are and what are actually segments of words. Teresa eventually gets to another set of initials that says AIE. AIE. I mean, he told me what it meant, but I can't remember. Detective John said, it's all right, just think about it for a sec. After a while, Teresa finally said, I keep thinking it has to do with an island, but I don't know what, because his parents were missionaries on an island, and he always talked about how he wanted to take me there. Oh my gosh, I cannot remember. I really wish I knew what they meant. Detective John finally asked, do you remember this one? She replied, I don't. Did you write these down anywhere? No. And here comes the unnecessary denial. She continued, because they really didn't mean anything to me. They meant more to him than me. So I think this means get dick big. That's the GDB. I'm sorry. I had to say it because she said it. I could be wrong, but that's what I would get out of that. Yeah. LYP GDB means more to him than you. Never mind the fact that you've been getting LYP'd and his GDB'd for 10 years now. Anyway, this line of questioning goes on until the detective starts to challenge Teresa on the age of the note. I've seen pictures of it, and it doesn't look more than a year old. You know, if Teresa kept this note in her wallet or whatever for 16 months, the folds and edges would have been more worn out. The paper would have aged a lot more than what it would have appeared to be. And remember, she at first tried to say it was 3 or 4 years old. Teresa continued to deny knowing what most of the initials meant. She said, I don't know. He always told me he would, he would write silly things, and I don't know. Yeah, so silly. Everything about this is just silly. Messing around like a couple of teenagers, playing stupid games, cheating, dumb love notes. I mean, who acts like this? It's like you have grown children. You're going to be grandparents before you know it, and you're acting like this? I mean, I am a far cry from being the most mature person in the world ever. But like I said in the last episode, I'm not trying to pretend to be something that I'm not. Detective John next asked, "How many other times has he written you notes?" Teresa replied, "Not very often, maybe once or twice." This is a lie. Later on, or it's either a lie or it's an inconsistency or it's both, but later on, she's going to admit that he wrote to her once a week on Sundays and she would get it at the church in the kitchen. He would leave her a note every single Sunday, which means that that birthday one meant something to her because she kept it, and she kept it close to her at all times. So after she said that the pastor wrote her once or twice in all the 10 years, just once or twice, "Where are those at?" And Teresa replied, "Probably in the trash from like 2 or 3 years ago." Again, more distancing, more denials, more lies, and she's going to freaking tell another story, another lie right after this. She laughed and said, "Seriously, he never wrote me letters." Excuse me? Aren't y'all sitting right there reading a letter he wrote you? And didn't you just say he wrote you one or two others? And later on, I already know that you're going to say he wrote you once a week. Even though that's a lie in and of itself, how is she going to sit here and say he wrote me one or two letters? You've got one right there on the table, and then follow up that statement by saying he never wrote letters. Yeah, you're dumb. And you're ugly. Going from he wrote me once or twice to he never wrote me letters to what she says next when Detective John asked, "How did he give you the letter?" She actually slipped up again and said, he usually put it in, whoops. He writes you often enough that he has a usual spot to leave it for you? That's a heck of a lot different than never or once or twice, wouldn't you say? Yeah, she messed up and she said that. And when she realized it, she tried fixing it by saying, he usually put it in, if he wrote me a letter, he usually put it in the kitchen and I would get it on Sunday morning at the church. Detective John asked, "And when did you say this was written? Because I haven't looked at the lab report. I'm going to go do that here in a minute." Teresa said, "It was written about a year this past December." And I kind of wondered why Teresa would lie about the age of the letter, because it didn't seem to make that big of a difference whether she got it 4 months ago or 16 months ago. But as I'm going over this again, I'm realizing that it probably has to do with the fact that she really wants to forget those initials and what they meant. And the best way of doing that is to say she got it more than a year ago, as opposed to just a few months ago. She needs that time gap in order to claim her memory gap. Teresa will end up doing some ridiculous math here because the torn up letter referenced an encounter that they had in the pastor's office 9 years earlier on her birthday. Generally speaking, they started off having an affair shortly after he became the pastor of the church, which was in 2000. So if she got the letter in December of 2008 and had an encounter 9 years earlier, it's impossible that he wasn't at the church yet. But if she got the letter in December of 2009, then it totally adds up to 9 years exactly, which is what he said in the letter. But Teresa manages to do some slick math and say, yep, 9 years ago, so adding another year to the age of the letter brings it to a 10-year-long relationship that they've been in. And just the illogicalness of it just seemed to slip by the detectives. So it's not that big of a deal, I guess. But like I said, now that I thought about it, it's probably because she doesn't want to have to recall those initials. After Teresa said it was written a year ago this past December, the detective said, "I haven't looked at it, but I've done this for a while. And looking at these edges, looking at the corners, looking at everything else, this looks pretty new. Are you sure it wasn't this last birthday?" She replied, "Oh, I'm I'm positive. Just let me look at it." And she grabbed it from his hands, and that's when she does the whole counting back the years. And she stared at it for a while before she did the math and just tried to blow past this line of questioning. Yeah, and if I were her, I would want to move on from that note too. And she is so dumb for leaving it in the trash where she knew it was about to become a crime scene of a murder. So dumb. But I'm really glad that she did. Really, really glad. Next, the detective asked Teresa if she saved any of the track phone numbers in her regular phone. She said that she did not, and volunteered to let him look at it. Teresa was very, very careful about what she did and didn't do with her regular everyday phone. There's very little on it. All the incriminating stuff got flushed away into the Missouri River. So she's more than happy to make the best of any chance that she has to appear cooperative. Overly cooperative at this point, it's so obvious. She lies so much that when she's actually being helpful, you can't help but be suspicious because she's so dubious. After spending a few minutes looking through her phone, Detective John finally says, "So, I guess you know Detective Rose Warren has been in here a long time talking to you. And the biggest thing that we don't understand is why after the fact, when David Love tells you about what he did, why you kept this a secret." Teresa thought for a minute and said, I don't know if, and she's stalling and deep breathing. I don't know how many times when I was by myself I would say, and I'm just being honest with you, and I know you weren't there, and nobody else was there. Yeah, Teresa, we're not stupid. That's what when I was by myself means, duh. Why I don't just call and just turn him in? Detective John asked, "Were you afraid of what he was going to say? Because I'm telling you right now, he's in a room 2 rooms over. They're talking to him. That was the text message that I got. He's talking." And Detective Rose Warren is trying to give you that lifeline because what he was explaining, if you get all wrapped up into this and you're not on the forefront and you're not 100% forthcoming, he can't help you. Teresa said, "I understand. And you've got to think about you. You've got to think about your children, okay? Not him." Oh, honey, Teresa definitely has the thinking about herself part down pat. And she most certainly put the pastor ahead of her kids, no question. So he continued, "So, is there anything that you haven't told us?" And yeah, I have the answer to that. Everything. Teresa hasn't voluntarily told them anything truthful. And her swearing up and down only makes her look worse. And he continued, he said, "And before you answer, think carefully, okay? Because you've got, and I know this is hard. I know this is, but I'm telling you, if David says, 'She knew I was going to do this,' and I don't know what he's saying in there right now, so let me say this. What would you say if he does that? If he does that, if he says, 'She knew that I was going to do this. That's why she left the office. That's why she went to all of these places.'" Oh, Teresa started to try to turn on the waterworks again. She got kind of emotional-ish as she sobbed, "Then he is lying, and he lied to me." "What do you mean he lied to you?" "Because he always told me all the time. He would just rack it into my brain that he would protect me, he would take care of me, and he would do all of this." Detective John said, "Yeah, but he can't do that until you're his." And she yelled, "I know!" And he said, "Okay, so he's not. He's in save his butt mode." And this is the time Rose Warren walked back into the room. He had been gone for a while, I forgot to mention when he walked out. But this is when he sits back down and he tells Teresa that they don't have the pastor in the next room over, that was a lie, but everything else has been truthful. And for the most part, it seems it is. But they tried for a while. They tried for more than an hour to get Teresa to crack under the pressure of thinking that the pastor was there spilling his guts. But you gotta hand it to her, she never broke, never even got close. So this woman is either pretty bold to be standing firm, standing up to these detectives that have been grilling her for hours, or she is confident the pastor will not talk, or she doesn't believe that he's actually there. And this whole next segment is about the controlled call that they ask her to make. And I have already gone over this in great detail in the last couple episodes back. So I'm going to skip over it. In fact, I'm going to skip over more than an hour that they spend telling Teresa that they're going to arrest her that night, but they're calling it a 24-hour hold, and they're going to charge her and book her into the jail. and they're going to execute search warrants very, very soon at her house and at the insurance office. So in the 10-hour video, this is getting close to 8 hours in. And on the audio that I uploaded for you, not including the intro, which is a couple minutes long, it's about the 2-hour mark. So all of that I just went over wasn't included in the audio that I uploaded. The last thing that you heard that was played was when Teresa commented about how awful it was, that she was so scared and so upset that tears would not come out of her eyes. The YouTube channel I pulled this from skipped over a couple hours here, so the next segment that you will hear is when they leave the interrogation room to book Teresa into the jail. Then it will cut to the next morning when she is brought back in to speak to a whole different detective. And he was interviewed on the episode of Deadly Wives or Deadly Women, I think. I think it was Deadly Wives. And this guy from the FBI, he is not nice. And I like him so much. Detective John wasn't very nice either. But this guy will stand up, stand over her, raise his voice, and challenge her harder than she's been challenged up to this point. It is ugly, and I'm sure it wasn't very fun for Teresa, but it'll be fun for us. Do you think she'll break? Well, we'll see. His name is FBI agent Virgil Garner. So what you're going to hear is the end of the interrogation for the night. You'll hear that in the audio. One of the last things that happened is the part where they let Teresa and the pastor encounter each other in the hallway. If you recall, in a previous episode, we talked about how he and his wife did leave their home after they received that controlled phone call from Teresa. When they did that, they were both picked up by law enforcement. The pastor lawyered up, and his wife offered up the phone numbers of the track phones, and ultimately, the pastor was sent home pending further investigation, while Teresa had to sit her ass in a cell for the night. And like I said, I never really knew if she was given bail or if she was held until her conviction, which would be another 2 years down the road. But they're going to let her call her parents and her daughter, who have been waiting for her all night as she gets instructed on what not to tell them. That's what happens at the end of the video. They're telling Teresa what she can't say to her parents and to her daughter when she does call. They tell her she's not supposed to say anything about the search warrant, and just to say that she's being placed on a 24-hour hold and that there isn't anything that they can do until they decide what they're going to do with her, because clearly she's broken several very serious laws just based on the things that were pried out of her over the last 6 or 7 hours that they questioned her that night. They tell her they have to hold on to her while they decide what to do next. But what they really want to do is to stop her from obstructing the investigation anymore. They want to prevent her from talking to the pastor or anyone else. They don't believe anything she's saying. They absolutely do not trust her running around loose anymore. They still have search warrants to serve. So they definitely don't want anyone trying to hide anything, especially her, before they have a chance to get there. They've had enough of this bitch. So they're going to let her rest before she's going to be made to go face to face with Agent Virgil Garner in the morning. First thing. And I certainly would not like to wake up and have to talk to this guy for 3 hours. So the audio and video cuts back to the next morning. Teresa had already been brought into the same interrogation room, but this time she's in handcuffs. It's the first time that we will get to see her cuffed. Agent Garner comes in, he introduces himself, and offers to take the handcuffs off of her. All right, so dreamers, this is where I had paused recording because I was out of time before driving to California for Thanksgiving. It's Sunday now, and I'm back, but if I sound different or tired or 10 pounds heavier, holidays are the reason. All right, let's get back to what we were talking about. Where were we? Oh yeah, Agent Garner. He took off Teresa's handcuffs, and I believe you're going to hear this in the audio. You're going to hear her whisper for a few minutes, explaining to him that her throat is dry. Yeah, because a night in jail probably sucks and is very dehydrating. So yeah, it sucks to suck. The first thing that Garner says to her is, "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" I feel like she's kind of put all of us through a lot, don't you think? He continued, words can't describe what you're dealing with. I need you to understand something. I'm going to ask you some questions, and we want to talk about some of the things that happened, okay? You're good with that? Teresa nodded yes. Do you remember your rights? We read you your rights, and you signed your waiver. Are you still willing to talk with me? She nodded yes again. So are you not hungry? Can I get you a bagel? She whispered, no, I'm fine. I think Teresa is trying to get some sympathy for herself here, but it's not going to work. Not with this guy, not a chance. He knows that he is talking to a murder co-conspirator, and the last I checked, law enforcement kind of sort of frown on that sort of thing. Agent Garner said, all right, Teresa, a lot of things have happened over the past few weeks, past few months, that, I'm very sure that you probably had no idea what was going on, right? Teresa started to sniffle again, and she shook her head no. So right away, this guy's fooling her into thinking that he believes in her. I assure you, dreamers, this tone will change sharply. Teresa started making crying and sniffling sounds as he was saying this. Right. A lot of things have happened, and that's okay. And you know what? You're dealing with a lot. If you need to cry, you cry. Don't hold it in. Just let it out. I expect you to cry. Yeah, but he probably doesn't expect tears. And he does say so in an interview that he gave on Deadly Women. It's either Deadly Wives or Deadly Women. Anyway, he continued, okay? And she nodded yes. He asked her, what are you feeling right now? And she cried, scared. Scared? What are you afraid of? I miss my daughter. Another answer, non-answer. Teresa's almost as good as Leticia Stout, and I'm really excited to get moving on to her case next. Well, pretty soon. I don't know if it'll be next. I might do just a one-off episode instead of another series, because I think Leticia Stout is going to bring us at least 4 episodes. Agent Garner said, I know you do, and your daughter misses you. She's probably wondering what's going on with her mom. Where is my mom? I can't talk to her. I miss her. Are you afraid of anything else? Is there anything else that scares you? Anything bothering you at all? Teresa stayed quiet. She may be nodding her head. It's hard to tell in the video, but she really doesn't say anything. The next thing Agent Gardner says is kind of patronizing in a way. He goes, now, I know you've had a lot of time to sit around and think in that comfortable cell down there. Yeah, we all know it's not very comfortable. Some of the things that were probably going through your mind. How did I get here? How did all this happen to me? One moment I'm a loving wife and mother. You just got your insurance agent's license, That opens up a whole new world to you, Teresa. Your world is looking good. Things are moving for you and grooving. Everything's happening. And the next moment, you're sitting in a jail cell. You know what I'd like to know? I know you talked to Detective Rose Warren quite a bit about a lot that went on. Can you walk me through what happened? Can you walk me through this? You know what? Because it's going to ease your mind. It's going to ease your mind a lot. It's going to ease the mind of your family, Randy's family, as if Teresa gives a shit. This investigation has been going on a while. We've uncovered a lot of information, Teresa, and you've been a great help. No. I really appreciate you being forthcoming with all of the information that you gave us. It's really good, really helpful for us, but I know there's some missing areas. There's some gaps there. What we want to do now is fill those gaps in, so when you walk out of this room, all of the questions are answered, yours and mine, okay? You agree with me? Will that work for you? Teresa said nothing but nodded. He carried on. We're not here to hound you. And you know that. We just want to get to the truth. We want to know what happened and why it happened. Teresa finally said, I don't know why it happened. He said, you don't know why it happened? Why do you think it happened? Teresa replied, I guess because he was desperate. He who? David Love. Desperate for what? Me. I mean, I knew he loved me, but I never expected him to do anything like this. Did he ever talk to you about this? Did he talk to you about hurting your husband, taking Randy's life? A few times he did, yes. During those times, where were you? Probably in the car talking on the phone. You were in his car or you were in your car? Mine. You guys were on the cell phone and you were talking about what was the conversation? Teresa started coughing and trying to clear her throat and never answered the question. Agent Garner slid a picture of the pastor across the table over to her and said, "It's kind of hard to look at that picture, isn't it? Now you look at the face of that man and you tell me that this man had your best interest at heart. Can you tell me that? Can you honestly tell me that he had your best interest at heart in his actions?" She just stared at it and fake cried some more. Who do you think he was trying to serve and please? Himself. That was her reply. Just like she was working hard to serve and please herself too. Garner continued, himself. He didn't give one thought about Teresa Stone. Teresa cried, I know that now. All this stuff he told me. The stuff he told you, like what? That he loved me and he would take care of me. I just don't understand. And she's sobbing. Did you believe him? Yeah. Sure you did. Sure you did. You thought, this guy's a preacher. He leads a congregation. Sure. What he says has got to be true. He's speaking from the Bible. But you found out different, didn't you? Teresa, you know what? And I know when we talk, you're not a bad person. You got involved in a bad situation. This is the bad guy here. And this guy is not doing you any favors at all. Not at all. We've talked to him. He's not doing you no favors. And you thought he loved you? You thought he cared for you? Hopefully this guy's out of your life now. Is that okay for you? Very quickly, Teresa said, yes. Garner continued, Teresa, some of the things that weren't clear during your interview, and we talked about this, some of the things that we just need to really narrow down. And I'm thinking that you have all the answers. I know you do. Teresa said, I'll do whatever I can. He said, walk me through it. Walk me through that day when Randy was shot. Teresa stayed quiet. Was a normal work day? Yes, we were having a good day. Did you both arrive at the office at the same time? No, we hardly ever did because I would take my daughter to school and I would go into work and he would come in anywhere between 9:30 and 10 because he would stay home and work out. What time did you get to the office? I usually got there about 7:45 in the morning. I usually worked from 7:45 to 3. And he got there a little later? Yeah, he got there about 9:30. Agent Gardner next asked, did you guys talk about much? What was going to go on that day? Anything different that you were going to do? Plans that you were going to make or had made? Teresa replied, but true to form, she is totally going to contradict herself once again when she answers, no. I mean, I had a chiropractor appointment. I had to pick up Miranda at 3. I was supposed to take her home and come back to the office by 4:30 because we were going to work late. We had 2 people coming in at 5 and 6. You see, dreamers, how she totally screwed up again? She just can't stop herself from universally denying everything from the jump. He asked her if there was anything different about that day, and she said no, then proceeded to tell him everything different about that day. She had a chiropractor's appointment. That was different. She was supposedly going to go back to work for 2 late appointments. Also a thing she said she never did was work late. She said it repeatedly. And so for this day, that was different. It was different for her to go to the dress barn. It was different for her to go to the bank that day. She said she goes once a month to make their payroll and to deposit checks and money. And that makes sense. Totally makes sense. But it's different than the other 29 or 30 days of every month, right? That's different. The normal average day for Teresa Stone is for her to work from 7:45 to 3 o'clock, to leave, to pick up Miranda from school, and then to go home for the afternoon and probably just get dinner ready and whatever, take care of her kid. That's a normal day. What happened the day of Randy's murder was completely different than every other day of the month. Agent Gardner asked Teresa who was coming in at 5 and 6 o'clock. She replied, "The person who was supposed to come in at 5, her name was Lavita Brandon. She's a client of ours and she sells perfume and cologne, and I had ordered something from her. And she was going to bring it to me. We did have an appointment come in at 11. We wrote up a homeowner's policy." And Garner said, "So nothing out of the ordinary?" "No, nothing. No. Your conversations with Randy, what were they like?" "They were fine. I mean, I was sitting on his lap a lot." Bull fucking shit. She was. The fuck she was. She's not going to be sitting on the lap of the guy that she wants dead. But yeah, she actually had the nerve to say that. "I was sitting on his lap a lot, kissing like we always do." BS. Unless she was being all lovey-dovey with Randy because she knew that he only had hours left on this earth to live. That I would believe, that she was kissing on him like they always do. More like you were kissing him goodbye forever is what you were doing. If that's even the truth at all, I seriously doubt it, but if she was, I would say it was a farewell gesture. Teresa continued, "We were talking about our vacation, our trip that we were getting ready to take. He had ordered some tickets for my son and his girlfriend to go to a concert in August, and he was just checking on the concert tickets, and we kind of just looked at that together on the computer. And then he said he was hungry, and I said I hardly ever eat lunch, and so I really wasn't hungry, but he went to McDonald's about 12. Yeah, it was around 12 or 12:30. We went to McDonald's, and we came back and ate at his desk, because they hardly ever eat lunch, right? Except for this day. I guess there's reason to celebrate over a Big Mac because soon my husband's going to be dead. Yay, pass the french fries and the ketchup." Planning murders will sure ramp up the appetite, doesn't it? Oh, I wouldn't know. Anyway, we came back and ate at his desk, and about that time, it was time for me to go to my appointment. I had a chiropractor appointment at 2, but I also had to go to the bank because I had to deposit our checks. Agent Garner asked, "Which bank did you go to?" "U.S. Bank." "Did you go to any other banks at all that day?" Yeah, I went to the Bank of America on the square. That was about 4:40, something like that." "You made a deposit or a withdrawal?" "Both of them were deposits. Bank of America was for business, and U.S. Bank was personal. It was for our personal payroll." "Any other banks?" "No." "So after you went to the Bank of America, where'd you go?" "I went to the office." "What time did you get there?" "I got there about 10 till 5. "Okay. Explain to me what happened after that. What did you see?" "Well, when I pulled up in front of the office, I thought something was a little strange because the blinds were closed. And he never closed the blinds unless it was getting dark outside and he's working late." "So Randy never closed the blinds?" "No, he never closed the blinds. So I thought that was a little strange. And then I thought, well, maybe our computer guy Tony showed up early and they went and got something to eat. But he always calls me and tells me what he's doing. We always call each other and tell each other what we're always doing. Always." "Well, unless you're plotting his murder, then you're probably going to want to keep that shit to yourself." "But he never called me. So when I walked up to the door, I unlocked the doorknob. I unlocked it, and I went to unlock the deadbolt, and it seemed really easy to unlock because it's not really that easy to unlock. And I noticed that it was not locked. So when I opened the door, I went into Randy's office looking for him, and I went in the back, and here Teresa paused for dramatic effect. And then she cried, "I walked into my office." And then she says something that's hard to understand because she's sobbing now. But I think she says that she saw him on the ground. Agent Garner asked, "When you saw him lying on the floor, what was your first thought?" Teresa said, "I just kept yelling at him to wake up." "You knew something bad had happened, didn't you? You knew something bad had happened, and you knew who had done it. Yeah, you had an idea. And you were like," but Teresa interrupted him, and she cried, "And why didn't I say anything?" "Yeah, why didn't you?" "I don't know." "How long had this been in the works?" "I have no idea." "How long have you and David talked about this?" Here, Teresa will make another denial that is a complete lie and contradiction to what she had been saying the entire night before. She cried out, "We hadn't talked about any of this." Not believing her, mainly because Teresa has already admitted to talking about this with the pastor. Agent Garner said, "You didn't talk about any of this?" Teresa shook her head no. And here in the audio, you will hear her go from sobbing and whining to complete normal speaking voice after clearing her throat. And she says, "He always told me." Garner said, "He who?" "David. He always said." And dreamers always, right? Always. When she says, "he always says," it means a lot of times. Every time. All the time. Each time it was talked about, she always says. He always says. Those are her words. She continued. He always said that he that he could take care of and she's real hesitant. Our spouses, if I wanted him to. And I kept saying, no. Oh, didn't she just say that they never talked about any of this? Didn't she just say that? Yes, she just said that. No, you're not doing anything. That was her reply to him talking about killing his wife and her husband. Her reply was, no, you're not doing anything. That's all she said. That's all she said, when it's a lie, because she was totally on board with this from the very beginning. Agent Gardner asked, when he said, take care of, what do you think he meant? Just say it. Teresa said, hurt him, I guess. Oh, good guess, you dum-dum. I mean, what else would I think? Gardner said, hurt them? Take their lives? Teresa said, yeah, that's what I kept telling him. Gardner said, he talked about killing Randy, your husband, and his wife? Yes. Why would he do that? Why would he want to kill two people? Teresa's reply, to have me, I guess. He wanted you that badly, Gardner said. Teresa replied, I guess. And how about you? Did you want him back? Of course, she denies it. No. Did you want him that badly? No. You guys have been together for how long, you and David? About 10 years. Your extramarital relationship with David lasted about 10 years? She said, yeah. It got stronger as the years went on. And he said, so what started off as what type of relationship? And Teresa said, like, close friends, good friends, And then it grew to what? And she replied, sexual. And then you said it got stronger. And Teresa said, lust. Sexual, then lust. Okay. And what's stronger than that? Love. Love. So you guys fell in love. Yeah. So for that 10-year period, you carried on that extramarital relationship with the minister of that church, David Love. You guys fell in love, and you started talking about getting rid of your spouses. Teresa replied, well, I never talked about it. Again, she just admitted that she did. Dumbass. God, she's such an asshat. Gardner said, but you listened to him. She said, I did. And you entertained his ideas. She replied, I kept telling him over and over and over and over and over again. Dreamers, she seems to think that no matter if she keeps on with these overs and overs, that is somehow going to make it true. The fact of the matter is, no matter how many times you pile on the overs and overs and overs, it will always and always and always and always and always be a lie. Teresa kept going over and over and over. David, you know this is not right. You cannot do this. This is not what God wants. You need to just leave it alone and leave it in God's hands. If God wants them out of our lives, He will take them out of our lives. And He always told me that I was the stronger one. He always told me that I was the stronger one and I was doing what was right. Oh, please. I'm so sure that David said that to her, as the both of them were sinning all over each other for a decade. You're the one that was doing what was right. Just stop, woman. Just stop this woman. God, I just want to slap her. So, if that's the case, he's supposed to be the pastor. That's what she said. He's supposed to be the pastor. Oh, it's his responsibility because he's the person in charge. that makes him worse or more wrong than her? I don't think so. It doesn't work like that. The both of them were two shitty little peas in a shitty little pod, her dreaming of becoming a widow and him a widower. Those were their life goals, to become widows together. The diarrhea of her mouth just kept on coming. And then she says, and I tried to break it off with him twice. Yeah, in 10 years, she tried all of 2 times. I try to break up with my boyfriend at least once a week and it never works out right. Twice in 10 years? Just spare me. So Agent Garner asked, and why didn't you break it off with him? Teresa blamed the pastor, of course, by saying, because he wouldn't leave me alone. Garner said, and he kept coming back? And Teresa replied, he just kept calling me and texting me and texting me and calling me and calling me, and I just got tired of it. Yeah, we know the feeling. Garner said, okay, you got tired of it? He just kept making me feel so bad. While you were in this 10-year relationship with this guy, you guys are falling in love now. You're looking for ways to get rid of this guy. Here, she misunderstood, thinking that he was talking about Randy. And she very sternly said, I was not. And he said, no. You're trying to get rid of David Love. And she said, oh, yes. Because what? And she said, I didn't want to do it anymore. And he said, you were done with it, right? You wanted him out of your life? Because I love my husband and I wanted to be with my husband only. Yeah. Did you tell your husband that? Tell him what? That I wanted to be with him only? Yes. Did he know that? Yes. What did he say about that? Pointing at Pastor David's picture. She said, who? Him? What did he say? Yeah. He kept telling me my husband was a fool and that he called him Nabal, which is the name of a guy in the Bible who did a lot of foolish things. And I looked it up real quick. The word Nabal is Hebrew for fool. He was described as harsh, bad-tempered, and unfriendly, and was featured in a story in which he is threatened by David over an insult and ultimately killed by God. Anyway, Teresa continued, I know my husband wasn't perfect, and I know he did a lot of foolish things, but he was a very good man. And he put him down all the time, and I just kept saying, leave him alone, just leave him alone. Agent Gardner asked, and he wouldn't? No, every time he talked to him, he just kept throwing things back in his face, his past. He just kept throwing everything back in his face. And Garner said, well, Teresa, you said you loved your husband and you wanted to get rid of this guy, get him out of your life, but he wasn't having any part of it. He wouldn't let you go, would he? And she said, Garner said, that's what I'm saying. You're not a bad person. You just got caught up in a bad situation with a bad guy and something bad happened. And your husband got killed. I'd even venture to say that this guy was planning on killing his wife after he killed your husband. What do you think about this guy? Like I told you earlier, he's not doing you any favors. And I want you to answer one question for me right now. Right now. Don't hesitate. I want to ask a question of you. Did you know he was going to shoot your husband? No. Did you know he was going to kill Randy? No. Did you know that he had an intention to go in there, the business that night, and shoot your husband dead? No. That solves the problem. He's on the way. And now he's got you. And you're all he wants. Did you know he was going to do that? No. Did he tell you he was going to do that? No, he did not. Did he tell you he was going to shoot Randy that night? No, he did not. What did he tell you? I never talked to him that day. Did you talk to him the day before? No, you didn't talk to him the day before. You didn't talk to David Love the day before Randy got shot. You're telling me no, you did not? Keep in mind, we have all your phone records. Teresa immediately dropped the emotional act and reverted back to her normal conversational voice and said, I understand. And unfortunately, the person who put together this audio cut it off at that point. There's a whole bunch of the interview with FBI agent Garner here that's omitted, but I'm going to tell you most of what was said. Later on in the interrogation, Agent Garner will give Teresa a break, and he's going to come back with an officer from the police department that she knows personally. I believe this is Officer David. We talked about him way back when I started naming off the various different Davids that are going to pop in and out of this story aside from Pastor David. I believe she knew him maybe growing up. I think they were friends and he knew Randy, and they're all members of the church. So it's an officer with their department, their local police department, that is personal friends with Teresa and Randy. And that's where the audio is going to pick back up when you're listening to it. That's what you're going to hear. This next section that I'm going to go over is omitted from the audio that I uploaded in episode 297. After Teresa said that she understood that they have her phone records, Agent Gardner stared her down for a minute before he next said, Teresa, you knew this guy was going to kill Randy. And she is adamant, no, I did not. He went into that business that night and he texted you, didn't he? Didn't he call you and tell you not to go there? Teresa yelled, yes, he did. Why did he tell you that? Because I thought that they were in an argument or something. Here, Agent Gardner had a good point when he called her out and he said, he didn't say, don't come. He didn't say, don't come to the business, did he? Teresa replied, he said, don't come to the business alone. And what does that tell you? She said, because I didn't want to talk to him. I was mad at him because he has ruined my life. I texted him and told him he has ruined my life and to leave me alone. And he called me that day and he left a message. I got the message and he told me to call him and I never called him. So he texted me and said, all I want is for you to be taken care of. Well, that's a new lie that we haven't heard yet. All I want is for us to be together. This is David? Yes. Okay, what did you do? How did you reply? And Teresa said, I didn't reply. I didn't send him a reply. I did not text him. The only text that I remember, and this may be, I'm just going off memory here, which means I might be telling a lie that you might figure out later on, so I'll blame it on my memory, which is not very good right now, as you're telling me, oh, so the FBI agent is telling Teresa that her memory is bad. Is that what she thinks being called a liar for 7 hours means? That it's really her bad memory, not that she's a liar? This just keeps getting better and better. So she told the FBI agent, my memory is not as good as you're telling me. Anyway, she continued, the only text that I sent him that I can remember was, you have ruined my life, leave me alone. Agent Gardner asked Teresa, what time did you send that text? I sent that when I was on my way to the chiropractor's office, and I can't tell you for sure what time that was. Oh, okay, Miss 241. Once again, you can't remember. This woman just needs to stop. If ever there was a suspect that needed to get a lawyer, right? But I'm really glad that she didn't. She just kept going. I know he sent me several texts. I know he called my phone. He called the other phone. He wouldn't leave me alone. He wanted to talk to me, but I didn't want to talk to him. Agent Gardner picked up the photocopy of the torn up letter and said, this is the man that writes this to you? I know. You are precious to my heart. And Teresa replied, and you're telling me he hasn't said anything? And Agent Gardner said, no, I told you we talked to him. I told you he's not doing you any favors. The one thing we need from you, Teresa, and I'm going to tell you, we need this from you, okay? You say you're on board. You want to do anything you can do. Now's your chance to not only help your family and Randy's family, but it could help yourself too, okay? We know that David had Randy's gun. How did he get Randy's gun? I have no idea. Teresa, I don't. How could you not know? You know Randy better than anybody else. You know where he keeps everything. And Teresa insisted, the only thing I can think of is that he went into our house when we were not at home and got into the safe and got the gun. Agent Gardner jumped all over that. David Love has access to your house? Yes, when you're not at home. We've given Justin our garage door code to get in while we're on vacation. Really? So they can mow our grass and take care of things. They're supposed to be men of God. We're supposed to be trusting them, right? Agent Gardner yelled, this man of God has been having sex with you for 10 years while he's been married. I know that, and believe me, Yeah, that's not possible at this point. I regret that. I do. Do you trust this guy? He told you how he was going to kill his wife? Teresa, how did he get Randy's gun? He didn't take it from him. I know that. How did he get it? I don't know. Did Randy keep it in his briefcase? Not that I know of. I hadn't seen that gun in his briefcase in a very long time. When's the last time you saw it in his briefcase? Sometime last year, whenever he purchased that little handgun. That was the last time I saw it. Where did he keep his .40 caliber? Which one is that? The Glock. Where did he keep the Glock? When he had it, he kept it in his briefcase. And when he got home, he would take it out of his briefcase and put it under the bed. Okay, so you saw it in his briefcase. Yes. Recently? No. And Teresa continued, this was last year before he bought the handgun. I had not seen the Glock in a long time. And I am telling you the honest truth. I have not seen it. The last time that I remember seeing it was when... And she paused. And Teresa's going to shift responsibility for knowledge of the Glock back onto her son again. The last time I remember seeing it was when, and she's hesitating, but she does it. Michael said that they cleaned it when he was home at Christmas time. You see what she did there? She was given the information the night before that her son told Detective Rose Warren that they cleaned the gun when they visited during Christmas break, right? Prior to finding out that he had reported that to investigators, Teresa said she hadn't seen the gun since sometime last year. And here, she's telling Agent Gardner that she hadn't seen the gun in a very long time. But it was only 4 months earlier at Christmas time. Is that really a very long time? I guess it's all relative, and I've been through this same debate over Teresa's, how she defines a very, very long time. But not having seen a gun in your significant other's possession in a very long time, to me, if you've been married to that person for 20 years, is much longer than just 4 months. But since Michael said that he saw it at Christmas time, she has to go with that story. But at the same time, she continues to want to distance herself as much as possible by calling that a very long time ago. This bitch likes to play word games, but she's really shitty at it. I'm not great at it either, but I'm pretty good at picking it apart when other people play games. So, in the theme of continuing to keep herself as far away from that Glock as possible, Teresa again said, I don't go into the room when they clean the guns because I don't like guns. Agent Gardner asked her, are you afraid of guns? I don't like them. I have shot one time and I don't like it. It scares me, it jerks me, and it scares me, and I don't like it. When was the last time you shot one? Well, whenever all of us were out at my parents' house. I don't even remember. Target shooting? Yeah, that's all we were doing. He even had my daughter shoot. Are you pretty good? No, I'm horrible. Oh, typical woman? I am. You can't shoot a gun? I cannot, okay? And I'm being honest with you. I'm trying to help you. Yeah, what a joke. I seriously am, because I had nothing to do with this. I did not know he was going to kill my husband. Yeah, you did. But then she says, and I tried to talk him out of whatever was in his stupid mind. Okay. Now you've just admitted prior knowledge, you dummy. You just said, I didn't know he was going to kill my husband, and then you said I tried to talk him out of it. The levels at which this woman tries to lie is absolutely astounding. Agent Gardner quickly said, so you knew he had something planned. You just told me he had something planned, and I think you knew that something was killing Randy. So you tried to talk him out of it? Talking him out of it, did it do you any good? What did you tell him? And Teresa cried, obviously not. Because you were on board with the plan. Why would you talk him out of it, right? What did you tell him? Agent Gardner's yelling at her. Did you tell him to think about it? Don't do it? Teresa yelled, yes, I said, don't do it. Yeah, this was really, really hard for her to put that together. She's only taking what he's saying and parroting it back to him. I said, you know it's not right. And then Agent Gardner said, sure. I said, this is not what God wants. That's what I kept telling him. This is not what God wants. And I tried to tell him all the time when I tried to break it off. I said, this is not the way God wants it to be. If God wants us to be together, he will put us together. I kept telling him that all the time. Yeah, bitch, we're freaking sick of it and sick of hearing you say it. And that's when he kept telling me that I was the strong one. Well, then why wasn't he listening to me? I don't know what else to do. I stopped answering his phone calls. I stopped texting him, and he wouldn't leave me alone. After that, Agent Garner sounded a little bit facetious when he next said, you had done all you could, hadn't you? You knew he was going to kill your husband, and there wasn't anything you could do about it. You could have called the police. You could have called Randy. Hey, Randy, this guy's nuts. He's on his way to hurt you. I don't know what's going to happen. Why didn't you do that? You could have warned Randy. You could have warned your husband that somebody was out to get him. But Teresa here, she sticks to her guns and she denies. I did not know what he was planning to do. Agent Gardner said, you knew what he was going to do because you just said you tried to talk him out of it. Yeah, you did. Teresa said, well, yeah, but I didn't know he was going to do something like that. What did you think he was going to do? Go slap him and walk away? What did you expect him to do, Teresa? And their voices are really loud at this point. It's so good. And Teresa, she thinks she has a slick answer for that question as she next says, well, he's always a talker. And Garner said, David's always a talker? He talks big? And Teresa replied, he likes to talk to people. About what kinds of stuff? Well, whatever their problems are. He's a counselor. Oh, okay. So he's a talker. He gets in there and he can really convince people to do what he wants them to do. Yes, he can. Do you think you were under his power? Under his spell? And cue the fake crying. I know I was. You were. And I hated it. Yeah. And he made you do things you wouldn't normally do, didn't he? Yes, he did. And he put you in a situation you couldn't say no because this guy is well trained. This guy is prolific in getting people to do what he wants them to do. He's a minister. How long has he been a minister at your church? 10, 12 years? Prior to that? Who knows? He's a counselor, a preacher. He presides over funerals. This man presided over your husband's funeral. The same man who put a bullet into Randy's head and sent him off to heaven. Can you imagine that? Teresa cried, no. But Garner kept going. And what were you thinking about sitting there in the audience, knowing that this guy shot your husband and he's standing up there presiding over his funeral? How did that make your stomach turn? Your stomach had to be turning just in knots. Teresa said, I was sick. You were. I was. But you couldn't tell anybody, could you? I was scared. Of what? Of him. What you thought he was going to do the same thing to you? And she sobbed, I didn't know what he was going to do. Did you think he was capable of hurting you? And here again, Teresa will give 3 different answers all in a row to answer Garner's question, did you think he was capable of hurting you? She says, I wouldn't think so. I don't know. Now, I know he would. Okay. I wouldn't think so. I don't know. But now I know he would. So, yeah, 3 answers. They get back to the Glock. Agent Garner goes back to the gun and he says to Teresa, Teresa, how did he get his hands on Randy's gun? She cried out in frustration because she has been asked this 1,000,000 times over and still refuses to admit to it. And she cried, I don't know. Oh, it's so freaking pathetic. And he said, that's the question I need to have answered. And she repeated, I don't know. Why don't you know, Teresa? Do you not want to tell me? Do you think it will implicate you if you say I made the gun available to him? She interrupted and said, I didn't know what he was going to do. But Garner continued, and I had no idea he was going to shoot Randy, but I made sure he's got the gun, though. Now, if that's the case, Teresa, that's okay. And she insisted, I never gave him the gun. And he said, you didn't put the thought in this guy's head, did you? She yelled, no. You didn't control this guy, he controls you. You didn't make him go in there and pull that trigger, but you provided him the means to do it. She stood her ground and yelled, I did not give him the gun. Yeah, you gave him access to Randy's gun, the agent said. I did not! The gun that he used to kill Randy. You think he just went into your house and took Randy's gun? How does that sound, Teresa? Come on, how does that sound? But she's sticking to her story, and she says he had the combination to our safe. He could go in there any time if he wanted to, and I guarantee you that's what he did. What? Say what? You guarantee that's what he did? She just said that, dreamers. I thought she had no idea all this time how the pastor got the gun. She had no clue, and now she guarantees that this is how he did it. All right. I see where she's going with this, and she's going off the rails because her lies are all over the place. Agent Gardner next asked, has he been in your house before without you there? And she said, without me there? Yeah. Has he gone into your house when there's no one else there? When Randy wasn't there, the kids weren't there, and you weren't there? Yeah, he told me he did. When we were on vacation. What did he go there for? He would just say he would go in. And Teresa took a minute to think about this. If she really wanted to go there with her lies, and of course she does. Now, the pastor's a creep who sneaks into her house and does weird, creepy stuff. He said he sat on my bed and he went through my drawers. And Gardner cut her off and said, because he's still in love with you. And she agreed, yes. He's trying to get as close to you as he can, no matter how he can. That's what he told me, she replied. Oh, really? All of a sudden, this FBI agent is sitting there literally giving Teresa ideas and pointers on adding more lies to her story in real time. He asked her, when was the last time he was in your house? And Teresa said, just recently, the day after it happened. He was in your house the day after the shooting? Yes. Okay, prior to that, when was he in your house? Well, they haven't been to our house in a really long time. How long? He hasn't been to my house in probably, I would say, 2 or 3 months. 2 or 3 months? So 2 or 3 months ago. If he had taken Randy's gun 2 or 3 months ago, Randy would have known his gun was missing. Teresa said, I would have thought, but Randy didn't go into the safe. We didn't get into that safe that much. We had nothing to get into the safe for. I mean, we kept all of our checkbooks and stuff in there, and Randy kept his rifles and stuff in there. Randy kept extra cash in there. We kept our homeowner's papers in there. Our life insurance papers are in there. Oh, yeah, the life insurance papers are in there that she knows about, but when she was asked about insurance, she said she knew nothing about it. So, yeah, she knows. Our social security cards. And Agent Gardner asked, he kept the gun in there? Teresa said he did. He kept all his guns in there, except for the one he had under his bed. Which one was that? She said, I think it was the 9mm, because I have not seen the Glock in a very long time because Randy told me he was going to sell it. Did he tell you who he was going to sell it to? No, he did not. I even asked my dad, and he even mentioned it to him that he was going to sell it. But I don't know. The only thing that I can think of is that he went in there and got it that day. That's the only thing that I can think of. Oh, you mean the only lie that you could think of? Because I wasn't home. My daughter wasn't home. My parents weren't at my house. He did have the combination to the safe. And Gardner said, and you gave it to him. Well, she said, I was down there one time with him when I was getting into it. So you gave him the combination to the safe. She said, well, he watched me open it, so yeah, I guess I did. He was standing right there when you were opening the safe. Mm-hmm. So you gave him the combination to the safe pretty much. Yeah. How does that make you feel? I hate him. What do you hate him for? I hate him for everything. For everything he's done to you? For everything he's done to me and my family. Sounds a little Sarah Boone-y, doesn't it? Like suitcase killer Sarah Boone. For everything you've ever done to me. Yeah. Everything, she said. All the people that he's manipulated through our church. All the people that he's hurt that I know of that he's hurt. Next, Agent Gardner said, Teresa, if this hadn't happened to Randy, would you and David still be in a relationship? Before the man could even finish his sentence, Teresa quickly and firmly said no, because as of the 17th of March, it was over between us. Oh, that's another new lie we have yet to hear. She certainly did not get rid of that track phone on that day, however. She held on to it until she didn't need it anymore, aka the day that Randy was murdered. Keeping that phone and staying in communication with the pastor is something that Teresa cannot get around. And she stayed in communication with the pastor after he absconded and fled to first Colorado and then to South Carolina. But she continued, I didn't want to talk to him. That's a lie. I didn't want to see him. That's more lies. And next, Agent Gardner asked her about the 17th of March. He may or may not know about that confrontation, but they do go over it, but I'm not going to go over it again. You know and I know that the whole point of the Loves going over to their insurance office that day was because Kimberly Love had discovered her husband's track phone and communications with Teresa and was on the phone. There was text messages that she was able to figure out were from Teresa, and she wanted to confront Teresa at her office. Teresa's never been forthcoming about that incident, and she certainly isn't going to start now. Either way, she told Gardner that was the day that they came in and quote-unquote went off on them. And then she told Gardner, and I already know you know about that, as if she's a step ahead of the FBI here. Agent Gardner then said, he told Randy a lot of things about you that day. Were you getting a good picture of who this guy was then? Were you really beginning to see who David Love was? And Teresa replied, yeah, he was trying to ruin my life. No, honey, he was trying to save his marriage because his dumbass got caught with the track phone. But Teresa can't see that this pastor is just as self-centered and narcissistic as she is. Gardner finally called Teresa out on all this God crap and said, he was trying to ruin your life. You said this guy told you that God wants you to be together, and you said if God wants us to be together, it will happen. And now, dreamers, this conversation/interrogation is about to blow up into a very intense shouting match, and Teresa is going to very formidably stand up to this man. She does not back down, and it again, at least for me, illustrates just how unafraid this woman is. How her claims of being afraid of everything, guns, Randy, the pastor, being followed, working alone in the office, being at home in the wake of the murder, needing her son's best friend to stay with her until her son comes home from college to protect her. It is all bullshit. When you hear this woman go the distance with this seasoned FBI agent, this woman is fearless. Gardner continued, you told him if God wants us to be together, it will happen. In his mind, maybe he's thinking that killing Randy is God's plan. In his mind, don't you think he's thinking that? Teresa replied, I don't see how he could think that. What? You've been telling these investigators for weeks that you were the one that pounded that into his head. Leave it in God's hands. If God wants us to be together, he will put us together. Leave it alone. It's up to God. She is the one telling the pastor that. How can she sit there and actually say she doesn't know how he would get the idea that killing Randy was God's plan when that has been her strongest argument that she's offered up in trying to supposedly talk him out of it? Absolutely insane this woman is. Gardner continued, well, you said that David talked to you a couple of times about killing his own wife and how he described to you how he was going to do it. Break her neck, roll her car, make it look like an accident? Teresa argued back with something different, something that she hadn't said before when she talked about this with Rose Warren. She said, and then he would say, oh, I need to get that out of my mind. And Gardner said, it's too late. It's already out there. He can't pull it back now. I know in your statement that you said David Love talked about David in the Bible killing people and how God forgave him. Teresa said he always used to use that as a scapegoat. She actually screwed up her grammar again right here, dreamers, and said a scapegoat. And again, this woman's grammar is about as cringe as her tan. I'd say the tan that she has edges out her grammar in cringeability. She continued, it was a cop-out, that it wouldn't be right for him to do it. And that's when I said, that's when I would tell him that that's in the Bible days, that it's not right. This is not right. You cannot do this. Agent Gardner said, He said, so you thought when he was talking about, I can kill Randy and get away with it and God will forgive me because he wants us to be together. I think maybe he even convinced you of that. He convinced you that it was okay, that it was in God's mind. It was God's plan. If we get rid of Randy, we can be together. And this is God's plan and all of this is okay. But Teresa denied this. No, he did not. Did he convince you of that? No. Were you thinking, well, maybe David is right. He's the minister. No. He's the pastor. No. I love him. He loves me. And she argued right back. His love was stronger for me than my love was stronger for him. That's the way that Teresa worded it. She kind of messed it up a little bit, but we get it. This is all on Pastor David, not her. Remember, he loves her way more than she ever really kind of sort of loved him. But Garner isn't having it. And he said, but your love was strong enough for him to work up a plan to get rid of Randy, to entertain his thoughts and his plans of killing his wife. And Teresa stammered, but he cut her off and continued, that's how strong your love was for this man. And then when he pulled it off, you were probably like, I can't believe he did this. I can't believe this happened. You walked in there, you see your husband laying on the ground, blood coming out of his ear. You immediately knew that David had done it. I know you did. She knows they know, so Teresa says, I was so stupid for not calling the police and telling them. And Agent Gardner said, you should have, but you can't go back and fix that. No, I can't. The only thing you can fix from this moment on, telling the truth, just being totally honest. I am. Helping yourself. I am. Teresa, you're not being totally honest. And this, dreamers, is when they start yelling at each other. Teresa holds her hands up in disbelief at being told that she's not being believed, that she's not being totally honest, as if this is some kind of shocking news to her. She has a complete look of shock on her face when Agent Gardner next says, why are you holding back? Teresa raised her voice, I am not holding back. Matching her heightened energy, Agent Gardner says, why are you holding information that you want to just talk about? Are you waiting for a better time, a better opportunity? And Teresa argued back, what do you want me to say? I want you to tell me how you and David plan to kill Randy. And she fired back, I did not plan anything to kill my husband. How you entertained David's thoughts and his rantings about taking your husband's life. You listened to him. I never. You probably sat there listening to him. I can't believe this guy is saying this about killing my husband. That's all I did. I just listened. You just listened. And I kept telling him, you cannot do this. This is not right. Did you ever say, well, if you do it, here's the time to do it? No. Here's the best place to do it? Never. Here's what you need to do it with? No. You never did? No, never. At that point, Teresa leaned in and she jabbed her finger in the FBI agent's face and she yelled, you give me a stack of Bibles right now and I will swear. And she slammed her hand down on the desk. A stack of Bibles and you will swear on a stack of Bibles, he said. And I don't swear. And you don't swear, but you'll swear on a stack of Bibles that you did not have anything to do with this guy planning your husband's death? No, I did not. And you think God's going to say, yeah, you're right, Teresa. I know your heart. Yes, he does, she insisted. Yeah, this bitch is going straight to hell, to burn for eternity. And you're forgiven for all the things that you have done. Is God going to tell you that? God will forgive me, but God knows my heart, and he knows that I am telling the truth. You're exactly right. God does know your heart. He does. Yes, he does. And who do you pray to? I pray to God. And who do you ask for forgiveness from? God. And who do you ask for repentance from? God. And who do you have faith in? God. Garner slid a picture of the pastor towards Teresa at this moment and said, who did this guy say he prayed to? The same God that I pray to. You think? You think he did? Are you guys sharing the same God? Teresa. Teresa. I thought we were. Teresa, I need you to be honest with me. I am being honest with you. I'm pouring my heart out to you. I think you think we're here to hurt you. No, we're not. I know that. I don't know how he got my husband's gun. I honestly do not know. That's why he told me at the scene that Randy sold it 3 months ago, and I really didn't think of what he was saying at the time because I was not thinking straight. It kind of sounded like this was the first time Gardner heard this about David telling Teresa that Randy sold the gun 3 months ago, as he really started to get intense, and he said, "He told you that Randy sold the gun 3 months ago, or he told you to tell the police that Randy sold the gun 3 months ago?" She replied, "He told me to tell the police that Randy sold the gun 3 months ago." "Why did you do that if you did not know that to be a fact, a true fact?" "I didn't know. I haven't seen the gun in a long time. So and he cut her off and he said, "So you took his word for it? The man who stole your husband's gun?" "Well, I knew that it wasn't true." "Okay, so why did you tell that to the police?" "I told the police what he told me." "No, you told the police what he told you to tell them." "Yes, what he wanted them to hear." "Exactly." She's so stupid when she said exactly right here. She can't even see the trap that she's lied her way into. She's getting so tangled up in her own web of lies that she can't even say 2 sentences in a row that don't completely contradict each other. After Agent Gardner accused Teresa of telling the police what the pastor wanted them to hear about the gun, she said, "Exactly." And then he asked her, "And you were okay with that?" "No, I'm not okay with that. But you know, by telling that to the police, you helped him cover up the murder of your husband." "I did not." That's exactly what you did? And for her to sit there and to say that she didn't takes a lot of nerve at this point after all the lies. This agent is almost besides himself when he says back to her, "Teresa, you just did. When you told the police a lie, that you knew this guy was lying because you had to know if he was telling you the truth or not." Teresa had to relent and said, "I don't know why I covered." But Garner cut her off and said, "Why did you do it?" And Teresa replied, "Why did I cover for him? I don't know. Because I'm stupid." Ding, ding, ding. We got a winner. Finally, some facts coming out of this woman's mouth. "Because I'm stupid, that's why." Gardner argued back, "You're not stupid. You just made a bad choice and a bad decision. But you can turn those bad choices and bad decisions around right now by telling us the exact truth." And then he yelled, "This guy had Randy's gun." And she yelled back, "I don't know how he got it." "How else will he have gotten it, Teresa?" She said, "I just told you." And he said, "I know what you just told me. I know what you told me, Teresa." But she continued to insist, I am honest. I am being honest with you. I'm being dead honest with you." But he yelled back at her, "If God was sitting right here in this chair right now, in this moment, and you said you had no idea how this man got your husband's gun," and Teresa cut him off and said, "I would look him in the face and I would tell him exactly those same words." Yeah, she's going to hell. "And what's he going to say?" Gardner said. She said, "He's going to say, 'You're right, Teresa.'" Gardner leaned back and said, "Teresa, we're not trying to jam you up." And she cut him off and said, "I know you're not. I'm trying to be honest with you." He said, I understand that." And she continued, "And I cannot believe," but she stopped herself. And I often wondered, after I've heard this a couple times, what she was going to say after that. And I cannot believe what? Something stupid like, "I cannot believe you're not believing me?" Yeah, it's not that difficult to believe when you're such a pathetic liar. And Garner said, "Okay, come on. This is your chance to talk, okay?" So Teresa decided to go back to her old standby by next telling Agent Gardner, "I don't touch guns," as if that had anything to do with her role in planning Randy's murder. "I don't like them." And he said, "You don't have to touch it. Maybe you just moved it. Maybe you left it someplace." "No! Maybe, hey, here, let me throw this at you. I may be totally wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. Randy brings his gun to work in that briefcase. You're in the briefcase because you want to take out the gun. And you say, 'Well, I'm looking for an Avon book or something.' And Randy, why would he have an Avon book in his briefcase?" "I don't know." She's trying to interrupt him, but he doesn't let her. "Just listen. Just hear me out. His gun's in there. You take it out. You take it outside. Maybe you lay it by the bush, or you lay it somewhere out in the front entryway where someone happened to come into the room, they could find it, or come to shoot Randy. They know where the gun is. And this is just a theory off the top of my own head. And dreamers, it's a pretty good theory. It kind of lines up with some of the theories I've thought up as well. Agent Garner asked, "How real is that?" And she insisted, "It is not real. At all. At all? No, it's a lie. Then what happened?" Teresa said, "The gun was not in his briefcase. He had not carried the gun in his briefcase for a long time, ever since he bought that small one. He stopped carrying the big one." Garner asked, "Was it too heavy?" She said, "He didn't like it because he couldn't carry it in his pocket. He wanted something that he could carry in his pants pocket or his coat pocket. So he stopped carrying the big one and got him the little one. And I cannot tell you when he stopped carrying the big one." Yes, you can, because you have several times over, but whatever. And she continued, "I have not seen that Glock in a long time." And dreamers, now here is where Teresa is going to change her story to match up with what her son told investigators, because she can't accuse her son of lying since he has no reason to, and she has every reason to. Teresa says, "The last time I saw that gun, I remember seeing it at Christmas time when they were cleaning the guns on the bed. My son and my husband both. That's the last time I saw it. We were gone. I can't even tell you the last time Randy got into the safe. I cannot tell you that. I wish I could, but I can't because I don't know if the gun was in there or not, because I don't touch them. The only gun that I remember seeing in the safe is the 9mm and his other shotguns, because he told me he was going to sell that gun. So that's what I assumed. He sold it. And that's the honest to God truth." So she's now making it seem like neither her nor Randy interacted with that Glock for 4 months, and in that time, there could have been any number of occasions that Pastor David could have snuck into their house and stole the gun. So yeah, this aspect of her story is still changing to suit the other lies that have been debunked. But she insisted, "I am trying to help you." Garner said, "And I appreciate that. I really do, because this is a rough time for you." Teresa said, "This man has ruined my life." And Garner continued, "Because you're a victim here too. You understand that in some aspects, you're a victim of David." She replied, "And I'm an idiot." Oh, another winner. Ding, ding, ding. More truth. Now, you say you're an idiot. You're not an idiot. No, Agent Garner. She's right. Don't argue with the woman. She says, "Yes, I am. You made some bad choices. We all do. You made some mistakes. We all do. Oh, yeah, right. That murder that we all accidentally planned that one time, right? Yeah, we all make that mistake. But Teresa, this mistake cost your husband his life. Your life will go on, you know that." And she sobbed, "No, it won't." "You know that. You and your family, you guys will go on. You'll do whatever you need to do to survive this. I know you will. Because you've got faith, don't you?" Teresa cried, "I miss my husband really bad." "I know you do. And he didn't have to die. Randy died for nothing, man. Randy died needlessly. A good man. Loved his wife. Loved his family. Loved his church. But he encountered some situations in his church that he knew was not godly." As Agent Gardner said that, he held David Love's picture up to her face. Teresa argued, "That's why we were trying to leave, but you didn't. He wouldn't let us. How could he have that much control over a man and a woman in this household that you cannot leave a church?" Teresa argued back, "We did leave. We left and visited another church, and that's when he came into our office and started throwing all this guilt stuff on my husband. He kept telling him that he had pride." "Oh, I'm sorry. You mean trying to have some semblance of pride and self-worth after being talked down to by the man who'd been banging his wife for 10 years? Yeah, I hope the man has a little bit of pride left." She continued, "and that he was bringing up all this past and all that stuff, and I just kept asking him to leave, and he wouldn't leave." Garner said he wouldn't leave. He felt like telling Randy all the bad things that you've done in your life. And she said, "Yes. And you took it. You just let him tell him. Just let him say just whatever he wanted to say. You had no defense for yourself at all? Teresa said, I told Randy. I told Randy when he mentioned something about Matt Bruner. I told him what happened. I didn't tell him everything. Oh, you mean you told him the lie that Matt Bruner forced himself on you? Gardner asked. Would you have told him that if it hadn't come up? Probably not, because we were trying to start a new life. We were trying to move on. There is a lot of truth to that, dreamers, except it wasn't we that were trying to move on. It was her trying to move on. Her trying to start a new life with David, not her husband. She wanted Randy dead, gone, 6 feet under, forever. That's all she wanted, and she wanted it by any means necessary. We were trying to move on to a different church. We were trying to put all that stuff behind us and move on as a new family. Gardner was still trying to appeal to Teresa from a spiritual angle, but I can't see how that can even work when you're talking to someone who is as cold and heartless and soulless as Teresa. Gardner said, you know that confession and repentance is key to your relationship with God? I know. But you were going to hold that in. You weren't going to confess that. That was going to be a sin that was going to continue to eat at you. How would you survive that? How would you have dealt with it right? Yeah, right. That one encounter with Matt Bruner is what's going to eat at her? Never mind the 10 years with the pastor. None of that needs to be confessed to. Not in Teresa's stupid little mind. This woman uses religion and God as props in her life. Phony props to hide all of her wrongdoing behind so that she's able to go around and pretend to be a good Christian woman when the reality is she couldn't give two shits about confession, repentance, forgiveness, or God. All this woman cares about is herself and getting attention from as many men as she can because she's apparently God's gift to all of them. Gardner continued, you're a godly woman. She replied, right now I feel like, and he said, like what? I feel like a piece of dirt on the floor. Whoa, she's on a roll here. Though I would have said more like a piece of shit, but I'll accept piece of dirt. He asked, is that what God sees you as? A piece of dirt on the floor? No, he sees me as his child, and she starts up with the fake crying. He sees you as his child. The child he loved from the day she was born. The child he loved before she was conceived. That's how God sees you. You know that. You know for a fact. And even knowing that, Teresa, as you sit here, you even knowing that, and you're still holding back. Teresa here is so quick to continue to argue and to deny as she cried, I am not holding anything back, I promise you. Teresa, have you confessed all this to God? I have. What do you think I've been doing down there? And she's talking about having been made to sit in a jail cell for the night. I've been praying the whole time I've been in there. And he knows your heart? Yes. He knows what happened. He knows the situation. I know he knows. He knows everything. And he knows how you planned everything with David Love. I did not plan anything with David Love. Never. I did not plan it. I did not want this to happen. This was not supposed to happen. And she is yelling and slamming her fist on the desk now. God was supposed to be in control of this, not him. Agent Gardner said, God was not going to let Randy die, was he? No, I didn't want him to die. What did you want to happen? I wanted to start over. That's what we were trying to do, start over, but he wouldn't leave me alone. He would not leave me alone. And Teresa is freaking out at this point. Gardner calmly said, so after this man killed your husband, you continue to talk to him. He was at my house. What was I supposed to say? You killed my husband? I'm calling the police? And she cried, I should have. Why didn't you? I was scared. Teresa, why didn't you? I was scared. I didn't know what he would do. You knew what he had done, and you thought he was going to do the same thing to you? I did not know what he would do. Agent Gardner then said, Teresa, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We really want you to work through this and to be honest with us. I am. And he said, I've got somebody I want you to talk to. I've got somebody I really want you to talk to. Somebody you know, somebody you trust. And I really hope that in your heart, deep down in your heart, down in your soul, that you're able to just come clean. I know there's some things I know you're saying that you've told and you've talked and talked, but there's still more. There's still more, Teresa. But again, she denied it and said, no, there isn't. He said, go ahead and drink some water. I'll get you some Kleenex. Okay, so now what we're going to talk about next, you will hear in the audio clip that I uploaded in episode 297. All of that section that I just went over, none of it is included. That was all left out by the YouTuber who compiled the clips together. Agent Gardner left the room for a while, and he came back in with an officer that worked for the department investigating Randy's murder, the Independence, Missouri Police Department. But he is also a longtime friend of Teresa and Randy's. I already mentioned that as I started to get into what's not on the audio. His name is David, but we're just going to call him Officer David to distinguish him from Pastor David. You will hear him come into the room, and you'll hear Agent Gardner say, Teresa, I think you know this man. And you will hear Teresa get fake emotional again and say, David. And it's Officer David as he walks into the room. It's not the pastor, because she does say just David, just to keep it straight, in case you do listen to the audio and you remember the part that I'm talking about. He's going to try to get her to come clean, but it's not going to go well. And the tension between Teresa and Agent Gardner is only going to intensify as they go along, because she is not going to budge on the one thing that they've been pressing her on for weeks. Well, there's a couple of things, but the main thing that they want to know is, how did David Love get his hands on Randy's gun? Buckle up, dreamers, because we're heading down the home stretch here. We're getting towards the end of this finally. Officer David said, things ain't good, Teresa. They ain't good at all. Teresa started up trying to issue more denials, but Officer David stopped her and said, listen to me, Teresa. Things are not good. You are here today because you need to worry about you, Michael, and Miranda. That's what you're here to worry about today. You're not telling the whole truth. Teresa tried to defend herself, but he stopped her again and said, listen to me, Teresa. There's more that you know that you haven't told, and it's time to tell it. This officer is not letting her talk, so she has resorted to shaking her head no at everything that he's saying. If you don't, you're hurting yourself. This is not about anybody but you. You understand what I'm saying, Teresa? She sobbed, I do. He said, I'm serious. We've known each other a long time. I know. This is about you, Teresa. I know. I'm trying to be honest. You don't have to try to be, Teresa. I am being honest. Teresa, you know more than you've told them. No, I don't. They know more than you're telling them. Teresa tossed her hands up as if she cannot believe that she's not being believed yet again. Agent Gardner said, do you understand that, Teresa? We know a lot more than you've already mentioned, and you won't even talk about the things that we already know you know. She tried to throw her hands up again and say something, but Officer David cut her off and advised her, don't dig yourself into a hole. She immediately stopped sobbing. She went back to her normal speak and said, what do you want me to say? Agent Gardner said in a slow cadence, walk us through the planning of Randy's death, how you and David talked about it. Teresa denied this again, but seems to have forgotten that she's said several times that they talked about it. And she said, we never talked about anything. Gardner said, you did, Teresa. You talked about killing him. You said it yourself. David would talk to you about killing Randy. Yes, he talked about taking care of Randy and his wife, and I kept telling him, no, you cannot do this. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Officer David said, okay, but what he wants to know is step by step, word by word, what he said, what you said, what happened. You're talking general there. Be specific. Teresa calmly stated, He told me that he could take care of it. He told me that he he could free him and I both, is what he told me. And I kept telling him, I said, no, you're not. Agent Gardner said, did you ever ask him how he would do it? She said, no. Did you ever ask him how he could do it? He never told me. And right here, Teresa stopped herself because she's answered this question. She almost did another universal denial, but quickly remembered that he did tell her, or she did say he did. And she said, well, he told me, he did tell me, he did tell me. He said 1 shot to the head and he'd be gone. Agent Gardner repeated, 1 shot to the head and he'd be gone? What did you say after that? I said, no, you're not going to shoot my husband. Did he say 1 shot to the head and he'll be gone, but I don't have a gun? I don't have a weapon? No. And you said, I've got one? No. I can get one for you? No. I can put one in your hands? No, I did not. What did you say? I never said anything. He's the one that said he could get a gun. He's the one that said he could get one. Did he tell you where he would get it from? No, he did not. He never told me where he could get a gun. I never told him anything about guns. I don't like guns. I don't want anything to do with them. He's the one that told me that he could get a gun. Agent Gardner said, he knew you had a gun in the safe. And she said, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I told you earlier. He had a way to get into our house. Nobody was home. Agent Gardner said, so you thought he was talking about stealing Randy's gun and shooting Randy in the head. I don't know what he was thinking, but he knew Randy's guns were in there because Randy had taken him downstairs several times and showed him his guns. Agent Gardner kind of mocked Teresa at this point and said, and David, of course, was looking over your shoulder as you were getting into the safe, so he knew the combination to the safe. Yes. And then he said, therefore, you're giving him access to Randy's guns, which you well knew. You see this puzzle we're piecing together here, Teresa? It's already been put together, torn apart, and put together again. Now we're giving you the opportunity to put it together. Officer David said, opportunity for you to tell your side, the truth, because that's what people are going to hear. That's who's going to decide your future, is the truth. Anything less than that is not going to help you at all. Understand that. She again started in with another denial by stating, I did not. But Officer David cut her off and said, understand that we're not saying that you did that. You just need to tell us what you know from the beginning. Step by step, that's what you have to say. It's your time to tell what you know. It's not going away. It's not going to get any better. And the only thing you can do is tell what you know. Agent Gardner said, Teresa, this gun didn't just magically appear in his possession. I did not give it to him. I did not give him no gun. What are you thinking if you tell us that you did give him the gun? What do you think it's going to do to you? Do you think it's going to make you look bad because you provided the weapon that he used? She said, if you're telling me that because if you want to say that he was downstairs, he watched me open the safe, he knew the combination of the safe, he knew where the gun was, if that's what you're saying, that's the way that I provided him the gun. Gardner said, that much we know. That much we know, Teresa. And then she said, then that's the only way. Gardner said, that's not the way I'm saying you provided the gun, though. But she insisted, I never gave him no gun. Never. I'm telling the truth. David, I never gave him a gun. I never gave him any sign to do anything like this. Officer David said, go back to what you said earlier about him telling you specifically 1 shot in the head. How did that come about? When? Teresa sat there for 23 seconds, and I counted without providing an answer. 23 seconds feels like an entirety in this room. Let's sit here in silence for 23 seconds, shall we? Ready, set, go. Imagine sitting in an interrogation room for that long, having been asked a question, the question. Go back to what you said earlier about him telling you specifically one shot in the head. How did that come about and when? And she sat there for that long without answering. Finally, Officer David said, Teresa. She provided a reply, but not an answer when she said, he only mentioned it one time. When? Just a couple months ago. What month? I don't know. Do you remember what was going on that time of the year? Warm, cold, close to a holiday? Where were you at? But Teresa just kept shaking her head no. What brought it up? She again provided a reply, but not an answer. He always brought up the conversations. I never did. I always tried to discourage it and to get off of it. I always did. I always told him, this is not the way it's supposed to be. This is not right. It's like, which is it? He only said it once, or you always discouraged him every time he said it? When she says that she always discouraged him, she's insinuating the subject was brought up often. But she just said for the first time that he only ever said it once. Every time this woman contradicts herself, and I know I'm catching all of this because I'm going through her interviews with a fine-tooth comb, but these investigators, I'm sure, picked up on some of it, if not most of it, as Teresa is consistently inconsistent. Officer David asked her if she's thought about it since Randy's death. Has it crossed her mind how this happened? But she still insisted that she doesn't know. She said, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know why he would do it. She said a couple of times that he did this to have her. He did it because if he can't have her, then nobody else can. So she does know exactly why. There are very few reasons that someone would be driven to this extreme to want to murder, and it's usually sex, money, jealousy, revenge, that sort of thing. In this case, could have been all of the above. It's not rocket science, and she's trying to make it more complicated than it really is, like that there's some greater, like, godly reason why this all happened. No, it was all over lust and selfishness, greed, love, I guess. That's what you want to call it. And Officer David called her out on this, and he told her, you said why he would do it. And she said, well, he did it because he wanted me. And he said, there you go. Now, and she said, because I stopped talking to him. And he said, you made a decision, right? Yes. And he made a decision also, didn't he? Teresa started to cry again, and she said, he made a decision that if he couldn't have me, nobody could. God, for fuck's sake, right? And then Officer David said, and that's why we're here today. Because people made decisions. And today is a decision for you now, Teresa. The decision is you just gotta lay your cards on the table. And she insisted, I am. And then she whined, I didn't give him the gun. And he said, did we say that you physically handed him the gun? Nobody said that. How did he obtain the gun? And she said, I'm telling you, the only way that he could have done it is to just went into our house and took it out of the safe. As she was saying this, Agent Gardner stood up. I would have gotten nervous at that point, but not this woman. He's exasperated as she continued. He had the combination to the garage. He had the combination to the alarm code. He had the combination to the safe. He had it all. He had everything. Officer David asked, how long has he had that? Probably when we went out of town to Argentina in December. Prior to that, he never had it? No, because Randy was just having him take in our mail, our paper, and stuff like that. Again, placing the blame all on Randy for giving his own killer access to his own home and his own gun. This is all Randy's fault. Officer David asked, so you're saying the gun safe he got into when you all were out of town on this trip? She replied, I cannot tell you when he took it. Randy would have known. Wouldn't he have been aware that the gun was missing from whenever the trip was? After Christmas, so we're talking a couple of months, more like 4 months. He wouldn't have noticed it was missing? Teresa replied, but he just doesn't, well, because they had already cleaned the gun before we left and put it back in the safe. Who's they? Michael and Randy. They cleaned the guns when Michael was home during Christmas, and then we left to go on our trip, but I never... And from there, Teresa never finished that thought. Officer David called her out again. You know more than what you're saying, Teresa. And that's the whole point. There's more information. And some of the things that you have said have not been the truth. Teresa tried to start to defend herself again, but he stopped her. Listen to me, Teresa, before you start talking, okay? I don't want you to justify yourself. You do not need to justify yourself to me, okay? I am not sitting in judgment of you, Teresa. I am not in any way, shape, or form sitting in judgment of you. What I'm telling you is what we're talking about is what happens from here forward and how this affects you. Because people have already made decisions. You made a decision. David Love made a decision. And that's why we're here today. It's for that reason. And so where we go from here doesn't affect me or Virgil. That's Agent Garner. It affects you. It affects your children. Where do you want to go from here? Agent Garner chimed in and said, He's making sense, Teresa. He's here to help you. Teresa stubbornly replied, I know. And if you can just tell me where I'm missing out, I am not remembering, I guess. Garner said, You're not remembering? You're telling me I'm leaving stuff out. Oh, okay. So now, here Teresa's blaming the investigators. It's the investigators' fault that she's a liar. Gotcha. She continued, I'm leaving stuff out I don't understand. Agent Gardner said, okay, let's back up to where David Love told you 1 shot to the head. Let's start there. During that conversation, he said, 1 shot to the head. That solves our problems. But we have one more problem. We have his wife to deal with. He already told you he had a plan for her, right? Break her neck, put her in the car, make it look like a rollover accident, and then it's just the 2 of you guys. Wherever you go to, the islands or Vegas or wherever you're going to go, whatever your plan was, whatever God's plan was for you. Teresa denied this and said, I didn't have a plan. David had a plan. Gardner said, David had a plan, and you were just going along for the ride. You even set this all up. You were even part of the plan because he told you about it. And you never even bothered to pick up the phone and say, David's talking crazy. You didn't do that. You went along with this plan. You said earlier that you were stupid. You're not stupid. You just made a bad choice, man. You understand that? Bad choices? You talk to your kids about bad choices and bad decisions. And from here, he goes on to talk about the lessons that she tries to instill in her children when they do something wrong. But I'm going to skip over all that because he goes off. So after he lectures her about lessons that she teaches her children, he starts raising his voice again as he says, you're holding on to sin because you don't want to let it out. You don't want to say, okay, I knew he was going to kill my husband. This is kind of the way the plan went. I don't want to talk about it because it will make me look like a bad person. Teresa, you planned this with this guy, David. He told you what he was going to do, and now he carried it out. He did it. He made you an accessory to everything he did. You provided him the gun. Oh, and by the way, in the video, she's shaking her head and she's about to defend her actions again. She tried to say she did not, but he kept going, talking over her. You told him what time would be the best time for him to go down there. I did not. Yes, you did. You told David to go down there that day, and he said, no, I've got a funeral to do that day. I don't know if I could get it done. I never said anything. I never talked to him that day. Agent Gardner yelled, you didn't talk to him at all that day? No phone calls, no messages, no texts, no voicemails? And she screamed, he left me a voicemail and I checked it and I told you that same day and I texted him and I told him to leave me alone. He has messed up my life. Garner yelled back, he wasn't about to leave you alone because he cranked it up a notch, didn't he? He cranked it up a whole lot with 1 shot to the head. That was his plan. He told you about it and he did it. He executed your husband for no good reason, Teresa, and you were fully aware of it. And the next day, he's at your house, and I asked you why you didn't pick up the phone and call the police. That man killed my husband is standing right here in my living room, and you didn't do it because you were scared of him. And at this point, dreamers, he's standing over her as he's yelling all of this at her. Teresa, your husband's dead. Shot in the head in a business that he built for him and you and your family, and you could care less about that. And she cried, no. But he just bulldozed right over her. And he continued, and you could care less because you wanted to move on with your life. That is not true. Then tell me what's true, Teresa. I did not expect him to kill my husband. Agent Gardner raised his volume and yelled, what did you expect, Teresa? Look at this man. Look at what he's done with you over the past 10 years. What did you expect him to do? I was trying to get him to leave me alone. You didn't do a good job of it, 'cause he didn't leave you alone. If anything, he did something to bring himself closer to you, eliminate the problem for him, which was your husband, Randy. He did that. Teresa yelled, I never asked him to kill my husband. And the agent yelled back, you may not have asked him to kill your husband. I never said anything to him about killing my husband. But did you say, don't you do that? And she screamed back at him, I did too. What did you tell him? I told him, don't you ever do that. I said, don't do that. I said, that is not right. You're not thinking straight. What did you tell him to do then? What was your alternate plan? I told him to let God deal with it. Let God deal with it? How? If God wants them out of our lives, he will take them out of our lives. I told him that over and over and over and over again. I don't know how many times I told him that. And what did he tell you? He said, you're the strong one. Yes, I got to get this out of my head. He told you you're the strong one? That's what he always told me. He said, you're the strong one. Gardner finally lowered his voice and said, is that a position of power he put you in? Or is that a position of power that you earned? Teresa obnoxiously answered, I don't know. He told you were the strong one. You told him if God wants those people out of our lives, if God wants your wife dead, he'll kill her. If God wants your husband dead, he'll kill him. And what's David hearing all this time? Go ahead and do it, David. Teresa yelled, I never said that to him, ever. Go ahead and do it, David. Kill Randy and we'll be together. And she yelled again, no. And he shouted back, what'd you tell him? Nothing. I didn't tell him to do anything. And Gardner said, in his mind, he's thinking, okay, David in the Bible did some killing, and God forgave him. David in the Bible killed a man whose woman he wanted. He killed Uriah. Teresa screamed, I know that. Do you understand that? Yes. Who did he want? He wanted Uriah's wife. Guess what? Here's David Love, not from the Bible, killing another man because he wants his wife. And you're right along with the plan. At this point, Teresa is screaming pretty violently, considering she's talking to an FBI detective. He had pushed Pastor David's picture towards her across the table. When she replied to him, accusing her of being along with the plan, she shoved that picture all the way back across the table and screamed, I was not along with that plan. You didn't do anything to stop it. I didn't know he was going to do it. And then he shoved the picture back towards her and yelled, you had every reason to know that he was going to do it. No, I did not. He told you. He told me what he wanted to do, and I told him no, he is not doing it. Did the conversation end there? Did you stop talking about it? Yes. Yes, you didn't talk about it anymore after that. No. So what did you talk about after that? Did you move on to something else? I was trying to move on with my life. I was trying to get out of his life, and he wouldn't leave me alone. Gardner calmed down a little bit and said, you told me that. You told me that he wouldn't leave you alone. And Teresa continued to insist, he wouldn't leave me alone. He called me, he texted me, and I wouldn't answer. And that made him more mad. Gardner said, and matter, and matter, and matter. 'Cause he's eliminating the problem. He's eliminated your husband. He's got no reason to believe that you guys can't be together. Only one more person stands in the way. Thank God he got caught. Or his wife would probably be dying too. Did you ever think about that? Teresa, here's your opportunity. You know the monster this guy is. You know the monster David Love is. But for some reason, I think you're still trying to protect him. And she argued, I am not protecting him. I did not know that he would go through with this. And that is true. I did not think he would do something like this. I never told him to take Randy out of my life. Never. Agent Gardner raised his voice again because she is yelling, and he said, but you told him if God wanted him out of your life, he would do it. And Teresa screamed, that's right, in his timing. In his timing? Teresa yelled again. In God's timing. So in your mind and in his mind, it was okay to do it now. It wasn't in my mind ever. I never. Garner said, it was in David's mind. She said, well, it wasn't in my mind, and I told him time and time and time again. Did you do anything to take it out of his mind? Yes. I kept telling him to stop thinking about it and to leave it alone. Agent Gardner then asked, did you ever tell him if Randy is dead, you and me are still not going to be together? Yes, I told him that. I said, we are not going to be together until God puts us together. Gardner jumped all over that statement and yelled, and now he's thinking, you're leaving the door open. You're not closing the door, Teresa. That's a closed door. That's an open door. Every time you said, until God puts us together, that leaves a door open for him. Every time you don't kick his butt, every time he says, I'll shoot your husband in the head, that's leaving the door open for him. Every time you listen to his little weird plans and you're going to entertain him and you're just sitting there, the door is open for him. And he's thinking, okay, she's not telling me I can't do it or don't do it. So now Teresa is going to come up with another angle, being afraid of Pastor David. And she said, if I ever said anything against him, he would get mad at me. Gardner asked her, would he ever hit you? No, he never hit me. Did he ever yell at you? She didn't answer. Gardner sat down to mock her face to face and said, he's so mad at you. So he sits there staring at you. So he's mad at you. What's he do to you? What does he do to you? What does he do that scares you so much, Teresa? Eventually, he didn't get an answer. Eventually, Gardner says, this guy's a monster. He's a monster, Teresa. What he's done to you and your family is unforgivable. Help us put him away for life. She cried, I am trying to help you put him away for life. How did he get the gun? I don't know. What time did he go buy the business? I don't know. He called you. And she screamed, I was already on the road. He called you and told you, don't come here until a certain time. And she screamed again, no, he did not. He told me, he texted me, he told me, he said, urgent, seriously, do not go to the office by yourself. At this point in the audio, Agent Gardner quickly changed the subject and asked about what car David was driving that day. Teresa assumed that he was driving his car, but he was actually driving his son's car when he went to go commit the murder. Then when he arrived later on, after Teresa found Randy's body and called 911, he showed up in his own vehicle. Teresa continued to deny knowing what Pastor David was up to that day. She said that she was told that he had a funeral and that he had to be at the hospital. Of course, she also knew that Pastor David was out and about committing first-degree murder in between those two appointments and thought that he was being slick by using his son's car instead of his own. You will hear her continue to deny speaking to the pastor at all the day of the murder, but the phone records do dispute that. They may not have talked, but they definitely left voicemails. You'll also hear Officer David ask Teresa about why he told her to not go to the office by herself. And she played dumb about that too, stating loudly, I don't know. I was supposed to go to the office. We were supposed to be working late. And this is something that Teresa previously denied hardly ever doing. But somebody needed to make the discovery, right? That was her job. Then Officer David asked her, if you were supposed to have broken up this relationship, why is he coming to tell you at the crime scene what happened to the gun? Why was that important? That's a good question. And you could probably guess Teresa's answer. I don't know. I don't know, David. He had this all planned out and didn't tell me anything about it. But you probably surmised a few things. You probably have an idea of why it happened. Teresa quickly jumped back into her denials. I didn't tell him anything. Did I say that? Teresa, I didn't say anything about what you said. I said you had a belief, an idea, knowledge. Teresa started with the fakery and the sobbing, and she goes, I didn't. And he said, I didn't say that you told anybody. I said that you had knowledge. Why would he tell you not to go there by yourself? Who were you supposed to go with? Were you supposed to go there at all? Yes, I was supposed to go there. My job was to find the body, call 911, and start putting on the Teresa show for the world to see. She didn't actually say that, but that's what happened, basically. Because I was working late with Randy. We had an appointment coming in at 5 and one at 6. Teresa paused for a second and started crying again. I was supposed to go back to the office. Yes, we established that. You needed to find your husband with the bullet in his skull, we know. Those were our plans we talked about that day, our appointments. The audio clip that I uploaded cuts off there, but the interrogation does continue. There's only a few more minutes left on what you heard or will hear, but there's still an hour and a half left that I think I'm going to go ahead and just leave out, because after this yelling match between Teresa and Agent Gardner, the dust settled. Everything settled down. And the narrator on the YouTube audio, he will fill in with the outro, like the closing of how the story all ends. And that's how he ends his YouTube video. So when you hear, I hope you like the way I put it together. What you are going to hear is his audio clips. I faded them in and faded them out, and I tried to blend them together while editing out his narrative. But I just really wanted you to know and understand every single one of Teresa's lies. And I wanted you to be able to hear her in all her glory. And I think you got a good gist of it. So ultimately, I am going to leave off the last hour. There's a few minor details that Teresa does add in, a few things that they don't talk about because it's calm now. And I think she's resolved that this isn't going to end. And she also finds out as they're talking that she's not going home that night. Ultimately, I don't know when she went home, if she posted bail or if she just stayed in jail. But I do know that she was sentenced to 8 years, 2 years later. So if you do want to listen to that last hour, hour and a half, it is in the 10-hour long video. I'm just not going to talk about it. We got through the best of it all. So in the video, Teresa sits there for a little bit, shaking her head, trying to squeeze some kind of moisture from her eyes. And the two detectives are just sitting there, letting the silence get to her until she finally decides to try and continue to explain that she didn't go to the office to discover Randy's body, but to do other mundane work stuff that Randy would have probably been able to do on his own without her on any other given day. Why would she need to be there for 2 appointments in a 2-hour period when her parents and Miranda are at home for the evening? And that is where she normally is, you know? She comes in to work from like 7:45 to 3, and Randy works from 9 or 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. It makes total sense. Her going back to work for these 2 minor appointments, I mean, one was the lady was going to bring her something that she ordered. That can be done at her house. She doesn't have to come to her office. She could be like, I'm off at 3, so if you're going to be after 3 o'clock, come by my house instead. But she didn't do that. And the other one was the computer repair guy, and she doesn't need to be there for that either. She didn't have to go back to work. The only reason that she needed to was because she had to find Randy and she had to call 911. However, I think that Teresa is realizing this discrepancy or this out of the ordinary trip back to the office, because this is what she says next. We were supposed to start cleaning the office up. That's not what she'd been saying for 3 weeks. And she continued, to just get rid of stuff. Oh, you mean like your husband? Officer David asked, if you're afraid of him, why are you trying to protect him? Teresa denied this, even though she previously admitted to it when she insisted, I'm not protecting him at all. And if you remember earlier, she said that she didn't know why she was protecting him. And then she says she's not protecting this man anymore. So, inconsistencies galore. She carried on with her slobbery and said, I wanted him out of my life. Randy or David? I mean, it kind of sounds like this woman knows how to get rid of a man when she doesn't want him in her life anymore. You have your lover do it. 1 bullet to the head. She said it herself. Then Teresa reverts back to playing massively stupid. I just don't understand why he did it. Randy and I were trying to move on. Yeah, you wanted Randy to move on to the afterlife. That's what you wanted, and that's what you got. We were trying to move on and to get away from them for a while. Agent Virgil quietly said, and you couldn't get away from him. He came to the office that day, and she's talking about the day of St. Patrick's Day. Randy emailed him. He sent him an email and he never responded. So Randy decided that we're not going back. So we didn't. Yeah, when Randy said that he's not going back, he was talking about the church where you're banging the pastor for a decade, not his entire existence on planet Earth. Officer David asked when was that email sent, and she guessed it was the Friday before Randy was murdered, which would have been 5 days before. She said he emailed him everything that he felt about stuff. Oh, stuff. You mean all your affairs, the 10 years with the pastor, the financial malfeasance at the church, all that petty stuff, right? Here, Teresa tells another huge lie and says, I told Randy, I said, I will do whatever you want me to do. How's about start with stop fucking around with all his friends? Did Randy ever say that to you? Stop messing with my friends? I'm pretty sure Randy would have wanted to start with that. I'll do whatever you want me to do. What frickin' ever. She continued, if you want to leave the church, we'll leave. I was ready to go. So she says, you know damn well she did not want to leave that church and she did not want to leave that pastor. They wanted to take the blood money from Randy's life insurance and build themselves a whole new life and a whole new church. Oh, and by the way, after the pastor left the church and fled to Colorado and then South Carolina, she rejoined the church, went right back to it. Officer David called BS again and said, but again, going back, gaps are missing here. He told you, David Love told you about putting a bullet in Randy's head. That's what you told Virgil. There's a timeline when that happened. There's a time when he got into your house because he had access and he had the ability to get to the safe. We're not saying what you did. We're saying what he did. That's what we're asking here, is what did he do that you know? That's what they're asking, and you're sidestepping most of these questions. Teresa replied, I don't know. I don't know when he did it. I don't know when he went into my house. Yeah, you do. I'd bet anything that Teresa was there with him every single time that he ever set foot into their house. That's where they did their thing mostly. When Randy was at work, kids at school. Everyone knows how this woman operates. Tan or no tan, you're ugly. She continued, I have no idea. I'm not home during the day. Oh, honey, you have plenty of time. You run a business that you co-own with your husband. It's slow. It's been 13 years. Your kids are grown. One is off to college by the time this happened. The other is 16 years old and has a boyfriend and a social life and doing her own thing. And Randy's home from what, 6 p.m. to 9:30 a.m.? She's home from 3:30 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. There is literally a window of time of maybe 6 hours, mid-morning to mid-afternoon when nobody's there. And you're never home during the day? And the pastor? He's a church pastor. He's a busy bee, clearly. His work takes him all over town. It's actually nearly the perfect setup to have an affair, to be sustained for as long as they did. Anyway, Teresa goes on and talks about what she does. I work, I pick up my daughter, blah, blah, blah. Officer David cut her off and said, but look at the things that he told you. And here is just another example, dreamers, of just how lame this woman is. She says, but he didn't tell me anything specific. That was the end of our conversation. That time because I told him I didn't want to talk about it anymore. Oh, like you told him over and over and over and over and over and over ad nauseum to leave it in God's hands? Is that what you're telling him over and over and over and over again? That you're not wanting to talk about it? Over and over and over again? How many times do you have to sit there and not want to talk about it for it to be over and over and over and over again? Here's a normal response. Let me give you an example, dreamers, of a normal response to someone telling me that they can put a bullet in my spouse's head. Now, ex-husbands excluded from this. Oh my freaking God, don't even talk to me like that. I can't believe what you're saying. My husband, the father of my children, the provider of my family, he does everything for us, I swear to God. If you ever say something like that again, I will have you arrested. I'm telling my husband right now, he needs to be careful because you have a target on his back. And so help me God, if he winds up dead, I'll frickin' kill you myself unless the police get to you first. You know, something along those lines might be a more respectable response to a person telling me that they want to put a bullet into the head of the man that I've built my entire life with. And then it would be followed with something like, don't ever talk to me again, don't ever call me, don't come near me. Then I would go and file a police report. Then I would go and get the order of protection. I'd start becoming unafraid of guns and learn how to shoot to kill. I'd set up cameras all around my home and my business. I would be terrified of this man as long as he walked the earth. And oh yeah, Mama's going to protect hers, you better believe it. And if I could, I would pull a Dahlia Dippolito on his ass and set him up to get caught on audio and video planning my husband's death and turn it all over to law enforcement to handle. I'd wear a wire. I'd meet him in dark alleys. I'd do anything to make sure nobody harms a hair on my husband's head, period. That is what a right-minded, normally pigmented person would do. None of this scolding him like a child in Sunday school. Don't you do that. You leave this up to God. And I don't want to talk about this anymore. You better not. And you know what? That's not even the response that he got because this woman wanted this to happen. She absolutely 100% wanted this done. Anyway, Teresa continued, I didn't want to talk about this anymore. This is stupid. But Officer David asked her again about putting this into a timeline. You didn't say when this was. When did this conversation happen? Yeah, if somebody told me they wanted to shoot my significant other, I would know exactly who, what, where, when, how, and why, because there would be a police report made immediately. Of course, she went quiet because that was not the nature of the conversations that they had about killing Randy. They planned this out for months, if not longer. All the things that happened that culminated in the falling out and the confrontation between the two couples was just the event that changed the plan from talk to action. Officer David will continue to try to get Teresa to put a time frame around this conversation, and he told her, you know where you were when this happened. Teresa came up with another non-answer, and said, no, it was just, and that was all she said. Officer David next said, the rest of your life is depending on this. I know, David, I know. Finally, Teresa said, it was just a couple months ago. I can't tell you what day. I can't tell you what time. I can't give you any of that because it didn't happen. She didn't say that last part, but it's because it didn't happen. And she said, because I don't know, because we talk on the phone so much, I don't know. Oh, so now it's convenient for her to talk to the pastor all the time, all of a sudden, in order to make her story as ambiguous as possible. We talked on the phone so much when she's been denying wanting to talk to him at all in the last couple months. Gotcha. Agent Garner finally spoke up again and asked about Teresa's best friend. He wants to question her, so he gets her number. She gave that information, and she tried to sound like she's emotional yet again, and she said, if I knew when he was planning on doing all of this stuff, I would tell you. Yeah, right, you knew, and you didn't tell. Officer David said, they want to know what you know. And Teresa cried, I'm telling you what I know, but I don't know. I did not know that he was going to do this. Again, yeah, right. Officer David then said, he told you he was going to. At that point, Teresa, for about the third or fourth time, shoved that pastor's picture back towards Agent Gardner again. So he then said, he told you what he was going to do. He told you how he was going to do it. And it sounded like a workable plan to you. Teresa shook her head no as he continued. My question is, who was going to take his wife out? Was that going to be your job? Teresa gasped at the thought. She certainly would clutch them if she were wearing pearls. He continued, he's taking a lot of responsibility on here. Teresa insisted, I would never do anything like this ever. Now, I would believe that, but wanting it and doing it in this case, they're pretty much the same thing when you have somebody that's willing to do this conspiracy with you. Remember, this is a conspiracy, a C-O-N, conspiracy. And Agent Gardner agreed and said, and I don't doubt that, under the right and normal conditions, but you were in a situation where you've been impressed by this guy for 10 years. And that is probably the most difficult thing to overcome for Teresa in this entire case. I mean, seriously, dreamers, in all the cases that we've ever watched, heard, researched, listened to, etc., how many affairs went on for this long before the murder happened? There may be a couple, but it's usually a lot sooner than 10 years. Look at Chris motherfucking Watts. 6 weeks was all it took for him to decide to murder 4 people, 3 of them his own children, after only 6 weeks with another woman. This here with Teresa and the pastor is like a slow burn. Agent Garner continued, this guy had a major influence in your life for the past 10 years. He pretty much owned you socially, sexually, physically, spiritually. He had a hold on you that we can only imagine. I, dreamers, would totally disagree with this entire thing and say it was more the other way around. Pastor David was whipped on this woman somehow, some way. But if nothing else, it was all exceedingly mutual. These two fed off of each other's toxicity, depravity, evilness, the lust, the carnal desires. They probably started tanning together too. Garner continued, and that's got to be some tremendous pressure for you. Teresa, that's got to be. I can only imagine, dreamers, the kinds of stress and pressure that Randy was made to live under for the final 10 years of his life. And I'm pretty sure this woman wasn't a sparkly, shiny rainbow of a gem for the first 10 years either, based purely on what we've seen in just these few hours. Imagine being married to this lying, cheating, home-wrecking, tan-stained train wreck for 20 years. That's why I tend to think that there was a time that Randy was going to be done with this, if he'd only lived to see that day. Garner went on, I can only imagine what it would be like living under that kind of shadow, doing things you wouldn't normally do. Well, at least you only have to kill your husband once, but who knows? Tan Teresa here still got a lot of years of more things to do that she would normally not do, right? More husbands to mess with, more homes to wreck. I am certain that this woman is still at it. Garner continued, but I think in this situation, you allowed something to happen. And she is shaking her head no again, as if that helps anything at all. And you know what? It's annoying. Eventually, Detective Gardner starts to ask her some sample questions. If she were hooked up to a polygraph machine, questions like, when was the last time she shot a gun? Last year. Did you know David was going to shoot your husband? No. Did you love Randy? Yes. And she insisted the polygraph would show that she was completely honest. She knows that polygraphs are kind of hit or miss, so she could say this with a lot of confidence. Garner asked if she would be opposed to being put on the polygraph, and she quickly said no. It would indicate you're being truthful? Yes. You sure about that? Yes. Then Garner tells her, it's because we have a lot of questions that we've posed, and we're curious about a lot of things, and we're thinking that you're not being forthcoming with us for whatever reason. Oh, you think? Teresa tossed her head back again. She looked up at the ceiling and starts to fake cry some more. But then Garner frames it as being because of the pastor's influence and control over her, a kind of control that she may not even realize is there, some kind of bullshit like that. I wish you could hear what she said next. It's not in the audio clip. Maybe I can run it into the mic right now for you so you can hear it. Let me try to play a little. I'm going to play it from my phone and just record it for you real quick, okay? The audio quality is not going to be that good, but you got to hear this crap.
Because, I mean, there are a lot of questions Dave and I have been posing to you, and we're just curious about a lot of things. And you understand, we're not thinking you're just being forthcoming with us for whatever reason. And it could be that influence that David has over you. You yourself might not even be able to identify it. Teresa, you understand that? You may not know the power he has over you.
I'm I'm telling you everything I know. I am being honest with you. I am.
Teresa, God knows your heart.
I know he does, and I am telling you.
And he knows what you did.
And it's true.
Does he know what you did?
He knows what I did. I did not do anything. He knows that I had a relationship with David. He knows what we had talked about. And he knows my heart. And he knows what I...
Yeah. I'm telling you everything that I know. That cracked me up. So after Teresa said that God knows what she tried to do, Agent Gardner said, "What did you try to do?" "I tried to tell him to leave it alone." "And he wouldn't." "No." "What do you think should happen to David?" Teresa stalled. She fake cried some more, looked up, scratched her head, crossed her arms, scrunched up her face, and then she said, "I don't know." Officer David asked, "What do you think should happen?" "I want him put away for life. He took my husband's life." Correction, you both took your husband's life. David asked, "What do you want to happen to you?" And she pretty quickly replied and kind of sobbed, I want to come home to my family." "Well, Teresa, you had 1/4 of your family murdered, but okay." He then said, "The only person who can do that is you." And Teresa sobbed again, "I am telling you the truth." "You're not telling all the truth." "I am too." "The fuck you are." "I don't understand what you want from me." "What else? I don't know. I know I'm not missing anything." Oh, God, she's so annoying. Teresa then begs Gardner, "Please help me. If I am, I want to know if I'm forgetting something, but I know I'm not." Here, she's trying a little bit of manipulation, perhaps, but it won't work. They are not weak men like the pastor. They're not going to bend to her whims and her wiles. The next section you will hear in the audio I uploaded, you're going to hear some of the whining. I kind of wish the YouTuber who cut this together would have provided the whining that she just did that I did for you. But I think what I played for you get a good serving of what this woman is all about. I'm sure you've heard plenty, if not way more than you'll ever need to hear again in your life. So it picks back up and it's edging close to 2 hours and 50 minutes in. And mind you, I've been writing about the 10.5-hour video, so you only got about a third of it directly from her. So you lucked out. I've been listening to this woman for weeks on end. She comes in whining, "I never told him to go into my house and to get a gun and to kill my husband. I never said anything like that. I told him. No, I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want anything like this to happen. I was trying to get away from him. I wanted him to leave me alone so I could start fresh with my husband. I'm telling you everything." If you listen to the audio, you will hear Teresa pounding her fist on the desk over and over again. If it were me, I'd ask of all the days, why the day you made yourself scarce in that little window of time, the exact window of time when Randy was murdered. Coincidences like that seem to happen in spouse-on-spouse murders all over the world. I'll kill said spouse, or I'll have said spouse killed at my behest, and I'll create an alibi for myself for that bit of time. Oh, and the kids will be at grandma's too, conveniently. Oh, and the door will be unlocked. Oh, and everything will be placed just right for the killer, just by coincidence. Officer David tells her, "You're not telling everything. There's more." And Teresa begged to know, like what? How about a serving of some truth with the side of, "Yeah, I did it. Hold the shitty tan, please." He said, "Teresa, you're talking very general. You're not talking specifics." And then Teresa goes back because she doesn't know how to talk right. She says, "Pacific what? I don't know any Pacifics. I know no Pacifics. I don't know what was in his head. I don't know what he planned. He never told me anything." Well, that just negated everything that she's been saying for the past 10 hours. You want him to go away for the rest of his life for taking your husband's life. And you said that he told you he was going to use a gun to put a bullet in Randy's head. And you just said that he went into your house and got that gun out of there. That's what you just said. And she replied, well, that's the only thing I can figure. Dreamers, I can figure the truth is the plan was for Teresa to give him the gun, but I might be splitting hairs here. It's just me. But she goes on, because from the bottom of my heart, the truth, I never, ever handed him any kind of weapon whatsoever. You say tomato, I say tomato. You may not have, but you might as well have. Agent Garner was like, yeah, I believe that. I believe that. And he turned and he looked at Officer David and said, I do. She never actually handed David Love a weapon. Teresa said, I never told him to do anything like this. He said, you're talking about handing and knowing, you know? Teresa whimpered, I did not know he was going to do this. He talked about it. And then he said, no, I can't do that. That's not right. And I was like, no, you're not doing that. That's not the way God wants it to be. And he would say, no, I can't do that. I can't think this way. That's not right. I mean, he would say that. Garner asked, how many times would he say that? And this question is actually irrelevant because the pastor did say it, and it's exactly what he did. And just like that, the emotion is gone again. Well, he only talked about it that one time, about shooting Randy in the head. He only said that one time. Garner asked, and what did he say exactly again? He said, I can do it with one shot to the head. I can do it with one shot to the head. He was talking about himself, saying, I can do it with one shot to the head. Teresa said, that's what he said. Agent Gardner asked, he didn't say you could do it with one shot to the head? No, he said he could do it with one shot to the head. Yes, that's what he said. I could do it with one shot to the head. And I said, no, you're not. I said, you will leave him alone. You will stop thinking this stuff. This is not right. Gardner said quietly, that's good. That's good. And I said, God is the one that's in control here, not you. I kept telling him that. You're not in control. God is in control. Just leave it alone. I tried to tell him that over and over again. During that one singular conversation, over and over to infinity, right? She only said it one time, but tells him over and over and over and over again that leave it alone. It's in God's hands. Every time that he would say something like that, he would tell me that his wife made him mad or upset or something like that. I think he was trying to get me to say, well, what do you want me to do? But I never would because I'm not that type of person. Yeah, right. So every time the pastor and his wife got into a fight, he'd turn to Teresa and start plotting a double murder again. Is that what I'm hearing right now? I'm pretty sure that's what I'm hearing. Anyway, Agent Gardner challenged Teresa's reaction to Randy's murder by saying, I was just thinking about one thing I want to ask you. What do you want to happen? What do you want to see happen to David? And you said, I want to see him put away for life. That's what I said. And he continued, and I'm thinking, if someone just shot my wife in her head, just walked into her business and pulled the trigger and shot her in the head, I'm thinking I would have been so pissed. That's just me. You see, that's just me. I would have been so mad. I would have known exactly what I would want to happen to that person. I don't think I would have said, I don't know. Maybe I still think you're trying to cover up for him a little bit. Teresa argued, I'm not. I want him out of my life. I want him out of my life forever. And that, dreamers, is the end of what you will hear in the audio clip. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and end this series. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, there's still over an hour left in the audio, but it's all just conversation between Agent Gardner and Teresa, going over her statement, making some clarifications. Teresa does add a few details, but they really don't have any impact on her case, and who knows if they're even true to begin with. And it is during that last hour, though, that she is told by Agent Garner that she won't be going home. She's booked in and she's staying put for the time being. 8 months after Randy's murder, according to the information in the crime scene YouTube video, Teresa decided to come clean and admit to her role in the murder conspiracy. She apparently admitted that she wanted him dead and provided what she claimed were the true facts of what she knew and what she did. Again, that can all be taken with a grain of salt, and I'm fairly certain that Teresa only decided to come forward because of her own selfish reasons. She probably weighed her options. There's life in prison or take the plea deal, which would have her serve out 8 years. She took the deal, she's served her time, and is likely out there somewhere in the world working on that tan. And that, Dreamers, was our 10-part series on the murder of Randy Stone. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm going to start working on finishing up the case of Seth Jackson over on Patreon, as well as getting some thank you care packages and cards out to those who have not yet received mail from me for signing up for Patreon. And if you would like some show stickers or anything of the sort and you're not signed up on Patreon, hit me up anyway. Message me on Facebook, but really the best way for me to see your messages is in my email, and that's in the show notes, californiapod@gmail.com. And with that, we will officially put this story to bed. Thank you all again for listening. I love you, and as always, sweet dreams.